Hey everybody, welcome back to D&J's Epic Quest. Feels like it's been a while, but we are back to start our coverage of House of Chains. And kicking us off here, we've got the Malazan Brotherhood, or I remember your Twitter name more than anything, Horsefrog Productions. So I guess I'm curious where that came from, first of all. But we've got Kamran and Billy here with us tonight, as well as my good friend Justin here. This is Derek, or Derek Thord, as I think I've picked my nickname for this book.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having us. We appreciate you having us on.
I appreciate y'all having agreed. Ditto. And I'm Billy.
And I'm used to saying, welcome to the Horsefrog Podcast after that. When we introduce ourselves, it's really weird. We've never been on anybody else's podcast before, so we really appreciate it. To your question, to your question about where the name came from, probably should have done some market research on this, but online I go by the name Cloud Frog. And then Billy, you want to say what your name was?
I used to be in a band for about 35 years. I'm a funk metal bass player, and the band name was Horse Knuckle. So we just slammed the names together. Horse Frog, there you go.
Nice. Right. Justin was a bassist, or is a bassist. I think you got rid of it though, didn't you?
Yeah, I gave up my music talent, or lack thereof, because I was a better artist. So it was one of those things where, like, I was going to art school. I still had, like, my band together from high school. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not very good at music, so I'm just going to stick with what I'm good at.
It was real fun. I still play, but it's, one of these things that I don't play with any bands. I just kind of stay current and keep my chops up.
Yeah, you wrote our intro. Really awesome intro. And then one of our listeners, Ruben, he has a YouTube channel called The Dark Composer, and he just redid it for us with full instrumentation. It was really nice of him to just out of the blue send it to us. So it's pretty cool.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it was real punchy. We really loved it. We really like it still.
So funny thing about Horsefrog, if you guys know anything about horses, which I probably should have researched this. You go on YouTube and look up for Horsefrog. You're going to get a bunch of farrier videos where they're redoing horse hooves, because that's a part of the horse hoof. So probably could have picked something a little bit more relevant for the podcast before we started. But we kind of started off with covering some other stuff. We were covering The Boys for a while, the show, and then that was our practice. Then we started covering the Malazan books. So that was ultimately our goal in the end. We just wanted to get that practice in before we started.
Gotcha. How do you guys know each other? How did the podcast start then? And I guess what's your guys' experience with Malazan?
Billy, you want to go first?
I was introduced to it and completely by Kamran. As a matter of fact, we worked together at Fry's Electronics. I don't know if y'all are aware of that late great electronic institution. It's a competitor to Best Buy. These were like almost themed stores. They were almost like working at a theme park of electronics. Magnificent store in Dallas we worked at, and Kamran came to the Dallas area from the Houston area, I believe, and was the manager of the audio video department. I was working in returns at the time, and we just we became friends because I heard him talking. He name dropped his children's names, and he had named them after the mortal enemies of Dune. I immediately tweaked on that and just said, we're going to have a talk when I get done with this customer. And then from then on, we were just friends, and he turned me onto the books. And the first thing I ever read on a Kindle or electronically was this series. And and he would wait for me at work, like, okay, where are you? What we would talk about, like, I'd be like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Be really excited about everything we talked about. So it's just kind of grew out of that. And I'll let him finish up the rest of that.
Yeah. So I heard about it from one of my friends named Ryan. We had read with Song of Ice and Fire up to that point. This was like 2012, the books that were available at that time. And then he recommended the Malazan books, and he hadn't read all of them at that point. And I jumped into them and I fell in love with them immediately. And Billy was the first person that I recommended them to after I read them, or while I was reading them, that actually dove in and read them all. And we really bonded over them. I mean, you guys were seeing how epic some of this stuff is, and oh man, did you see this? Did you do that? Did you get to this yet? And it's just really fun having somebody to talk to about this stuff. And so we built a really strong friendship just based on the Malazan books and talking about it. I mean, other stuff too. You know, we're comic book nerds and all the other stuff that goes along with that. But get my mom to read them. So going to why we started the podcast, I had been wanting to do a podcast for a long time. Couldn't figure out what I wanted to do it about or who I was going to do it with. And I'd approached a couple of my friends, and Billy reached out to me because he was getting some autographed copies of Malazan books, and he asked which one my favorite was. And this was kind of a thank you present for introducing him to the series. So I told him Dead House Gates is my favorite. So he bought me an autographed copy of Dead House Gates by Steven Erikson. Yeah, awesome. It's really sick. Yeah, wanted my mom to read the books, but she always was complaining about how big the cast was. She gets confused by the names and all the other stuff. She tried a couple times. I had that in the back of my mind, and then Billy sends me this message about what my favorite book is, and then a light bulb went off, and I was like, "Hey, do you want to do this podcast together?" And Billy, you want to say what your response was?
I started typing back this huge response about, I was just seeing if you're all right, just checking on you kind of thing. And it's like, you know what, you're right. Let's just do this. I said, yes, I did. That is exactly what I meant. And the rest is history, as they say.
That's funny because that sounds pretty similar to how Justin and I got started, because he was finishing up Wheel of Time. And then he came down when the show dropped, and we watched the first 3 episodes. And when we were hanging out, I'm like, dude, I've got these books. Like, I haven't read them. Do you want to read them together? And he's like, yeah, that'd be cool. And then I don't know if it was a day or 2 later, whatever it was. I'm like, dude, like, we should do a podcast. Because I was looking and I couldn't find many. It was basically 10 very big books. And really, that was about all I found. And like, there's not much out here for this. Like, we're not going to have any clue. Like, there were some podcasts that I listened to that it was like, there was a Wheel of Time one that I listened to that was like, they did 2 chapters. The White Tower podcast, they're not doing it anymore, haven't for a while. And then there's a Song of Ice and Fire one that I like. And so I'm like, okay, like, I think we could do this. Like, we'll just do a chapter at a time here and just kind of figure it out. And luckily Justin's a tech genius, because I wouldn't be able to do this stuff without him. So it just kind of turned out to be a good match.
Awesome. So at the level that you guys are covering it for your first read through, that's a big commitment. Because Billy and I, we're going a little bit slower than y'all, but this is our 4th time through, so we're intentionally doing it. But to make that much of a commitment with the rate that you guys are doing, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is very impressive.
I don't think we could Justin's definitely more detail oriented than myself, but I don't think we could do more than 1 chapter at a time. I mean, we got a prologue, which is a couple pages in the first chapter tonight, but I don't think either of us really knows how to like skip some of these details, and like, we don't know what to gloss over, what's important, what's not important. And so we just kind of, I guess, go through it. And honestly, like, I really like it when we disagree on stuff, because it's fun. So I hope we get some of that in this book. And I've got something that I've picked up. I was texting Justin today. I've got something that I've noticed in this first chapter. I haven't read his comments on it, so maybe he's picked up on it too, but maybe not. So we'll just have to see. But you guys will definitely know if I'm onto something or not. So I'm excited for that. I don't know that you'll disagree, Justin, but I feel like it could be like a really big like light bulb moment. So I'm definitely excited to talk about it.
Heard. On pain of death, we are not allowed to spoil anything, or Justin will have punitive measures against us. I've warned Billy, do not spoil anything.
It's okay to tell us no.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm working hard.
I don't know that it'll be. I mean, I guess you could spoil it, but I don't know. Like, if it's one of those things, you could just say, I can't say anything, like that type of deal. And
I'll do that.
Yeah. But
I will say one important thing. It is all important. Everything is important.
Well, I guess the way that I view it in my mind is like it's like old school video game strategy guides, right? Like the first time through is just like you're really like your exploration, it's your kind of just figuring out the world and just enjoying the journey along the way. And that's kind of how I see this podcast is just like, yeah, we don't know what we're talking about. We're probably way in left field more than we should be. There's definitely some easy things that we have missed, but it's just kind of like living vicariously through us for the first time, and we do end up reading these chapters like 2 or 3 times on top of summarizing. So like you really want to understand something, like just summarize, just fucking write down what you read and you will have a much bigger picture. So I feel like we're first time readers and a half. We're not second time readers, but we're not first time readers. We're like 1.5 time readers. Because I definitely think we pick up a little bit more than just someone going through it, but we like to, yeah.
I agree with you on that.
Oh, sure. I was just saying, like, we legitimately, like, we do not read the next chapter until after we've recorded, like, this chapter. So we have not read chapter 2 yet. We hold ourselves to that. And it's hard sometimes.
Oh, wow.
Just to keep that honesty on the episode. So, like, realistically, so it's November 4th. This episode will probably drop in, like, what, Justin, probably 3 weeks to a month from now. I'm like, we'll talk about this chapter, but we don't know what's coming next. We haven't read anything beyond this.
The depth that you're going to, it's really useful because when I was reading through the first time, when you get to those really exciting battles and some of the things where everybody's converging at the same time and you build up to this moment, I'm reading a million miles an hour and you look over some of the details that are sprinkled in there sometimes that you might have caught if you were going through it more in depth like you would in a podcast. So that's one of the things that I've appreciated going through it at a much slower rate on a week by week basis. Because while I've read it 4 times and I know generally where the story's going, it's been a long time since I read it. So I don't remember exactly everything. And we don't read ahead. And that's kind of cool because we do forget some things as we're going forward and we remind ourselves. So that slower pace really helps pick up a lot of details.
But I agree with Comron. We're doing it as a week by week as we cover it. We're not going ahead to the next chapter. My biggest problem in this series of the books is that y'all have to remember this like yourselves. This series was finished when I started reading it. So I read it through just once, and like you, Justin, I was just getting my feet under me. The minute I finished, I turned around and started the series again. I couldn't wait. And every time I go through it, I pick up something new. But it really took slowing down with Comron to really come to some deeper, just, oh my good gracious. You'll hear us in the show where it's like, oh my good gracious, I just put something together just right here and now. But but my biggest issue is I have a hard time separating the books in my mind. They're all one piece. It's just all one giant piece.
That's kind of cool to hear that it fits together like that. So you guys do one chapter at a time also then?
Well, so far, the longest chapter we've covered, we had to split into 4 parts. We get through about 10 to 11 pages of our notes in an hour. We are known for digressing. So, I don't know how much of our coverage is digression.
Professionally,
we're quite professional in that. But I don't know how much of it is actually digression versus the book. But the majority of it, I would say easily 90-95% is Malazan content.
Well, we've been known to go on tangents too, so it's all good. I think we'll have a good time tonight. It should be a good time.
Looking forward to it.
Well, Justin, you want to take our patrons here?
Yeah, sure. So in order of subscription, we've got Jan the Picker, Luciana Intrigan, Ryan the Topological, Damien the Rock of Faces, Nate Fiddle Me This, Shield Anvil Dylan, Calvin He Who Witnessed, Livia the Malazan Potato, Aaron Mod Irregular, Scott the Only, Graceless Passion, and then Dead Smell. Patrons, thank you all for your patronage. We appreciate it every day.
Livia comes and comments on our stuff. It's been a while since we heard from her, but she was commenting quite frequently. So we appreciate her listening too.
Yes, very much.
I know she is. Maybe she's having a baby. Maybe she's had it now because she's usually pretty good about commenting to us too. And when we did our Chapter 25 live stream, she was there for a little bit, but Yeah, I guess I don't know how close she was. So congratulations, Livia, if you've had your baby, or good luck if you're not there yet.
Success.
Ditto.
Yeah.
Witness.
There you go. Just something to mention here, I guess, we should probably bring up in this chapter, there is, I guess, I don't know if you want to call it rape or sexual assault, but there is some of that type of content here. And I'm sure we'll talk about that as tastefully as we can for that type of subject matter. It's, we're not going to be giggling about it or anything like that. But just as a forewarning, that type of stuff is here. Justin, you want to get started with the prologue here?
Sure. So I guess I'm not sure how familiar you are with our content, but we summarize kind of each section or point of view, and then we'll read those summaries, and then we kind of discuss that. And then once we're done with the discussion, we just move on to the next section, so to speak. This here is the prologue. The shore was littered with bodies, the flesh covered in crabs who had started to feast on the bodies that the split warren had provided them. In the distance, the tops of buildings could be barely seen. The storm had passed and the waters were calm amidst the wreckage of this drowned world. The climate had been cold for the short, squat inhabitants here. That had changed as the warrens split, causing a wide, continent-spanning opening from a river on another realm. The river had poured its torrential downpour onto this vast level landscape. Days, weeks, and then months went by of this. Storms were caused by the heat and the cold of the climate had driven the flood onwards. And before the rising waters set in, plagues took those that the waters didn't. The rent had closed the previous night, returning the river to its original path. The beach was nothing more than silt, heaped up against a huge wall that seemed to stretch on forever. The fact that it held back an entire sea made it seem the wall was built with sorcery. Troll Sengar was escorted down the beach by his captors. Troll had a hard time understanding this, as they were his kin, his brothers, faces he had known all his life. He had stood at their sides through all that had happened. The march ended and Troll was pulled. Massive iron rings had been mounted on top of the stone wall by the now dead inhabitants. Those rings had found a new function. Troll's kin brutally chained him to those chains. A knife was pulled out and inscribed on his forehead a circle with a jagged slash to break the circle. Ash was then rubbed into this wound. His single long braid was cut, and a thick paste was applied to his hair that would make him go bald. This was the shorning. It was an absolute thing, an irreversible act of severance. He was now outcast. He would cease to exist in the eyes of his peoples, yet Troll Sengar committed no crime. They stood above him. A familiar voice broke the silence. The voice told the others that they will speak of Troll now, but once they leave, they will speak of him no more. The others intoned that Troll had betrayed this first person. The first voice asked how the others knew. The others replied that it was by Troll's own admission. Troll had said that this first voice now served a hidden master, and that ambition would lead his people to their deaths. The first person asked the rest of them if he had betrayed his own people. He asks his brothers what they must do. They respond in unison, and in unison that they must search. The first then tells them all what made the search worse. Was Troll had spoken to defend the new enemies that they had found. The others replied and said that Troll had called them pure kin. The first stated that if they had been indeed first kin, then they wouldn't have died so easily. The crowd in unison exclaims that the first was betrayed. Troll thought to himself that this first now shared his crime to the others, and that they had not caught it. The first dude started speaking to his crowd again, telling him that they should look within themselves to make sure this threat of betrayal will not spread. He continued to say they've spoken of him, Troll. He now is gone. The crowd parroted the words. Troll listened as they walked away. He was alone and unable to move. The sea rustled the corpses along the shoreline. Among his people, it was known that nature fought one war. To understand that meant understanding every world. Troll thought to himself that nature fought one enemy, and that was imbalance. He thought about the wall and how it held the sea. He figured that it wouldn't hold for much longer, and the flood would eventually drown him. He suspected that not before long his people would join him. His brother had shattered the balance. He thought to himself that nature shall not abide. Pretty fucking epic goddamn way to like open this book. I know Derek has this thing for prologues and how they just keep escalating in richness as they kind of go along. It just the vision and like the amount of detail that you get with just the very opening paragraph of this prologue is just tragically beautiful. You know, it's great to imagine, but at the same time, it's like, God damn, that's brutal.
Yeah, I feel like every prologue that we've read in this series so far, which is 4, but they just keep turning it up. I remember reading Dead House Gates and like, holy crap, you know, this is an 11 compared to Gardens of the Moon. And then Memories of Ice, like it even amped up from there. And then this one, I don't know, this might be my favorite epigraph, my favorite prologue that we've read so far. Have you guys seen Alien 3?
Huge Alien fan over here.
Me too. Yes,
rock
Billy.
on.
You are my guy. All I could see like throughout this prologue was just the Andrews, that guy, like he's the first dude wherever, the leader of the pack, and I'm like, man, this just feels like Alien 3 to me for whatever reason.
I could see that there's some really good imagery in this, and the thing that Comrade and I have multiply talked about many times is what a strong visual writer Erikson is. I had never have any problem visualizing his stuff. It's always just so graphically painted, no matter what it is, and we can never put our finger exactly on what it is. Is it the small details of the characters? Is it the wildness of the world? It's everything. I love everything about it, and you're right. Every prologue is always so pertinent to each book, and they just keep amping up.
Yeah.
It surprises me that you think this prologue is more epic than Memories of Ice with Calor burning an entire continent, because that was hardcore. But a couple of things stuck out to me in this prologue. First, I want some of this stuff to rub on my head so I don't have to shave it anymore, that they put on his head to keep him bald for the rest of his life.
Amen.
The river that they flooded this with, it reminds me of in Dead House Gates when Culp and the rest of the crew, like Stormy and them, were on the Solanda, and he was looking for a way out, and he opened that rent and followed the undead dragon through. If you recall, it started to tear open wider through the force of the water going through there. And for this amount of water to flood an entire realm, it just makes me wonder how big this rent got with a river of this size flowing through unending for months on end.
Well, it does say the Warren split causing a wide continent spanning opening.
Oh God. Okay. Yeah. I missed that part. Okay.
Yeah. So I imagine like this was huge. And I mean, this part has already got me intrigued. And yeah, as soon as I read this, like I'm immediately recalled to the Solanda and Dead House Gates. And I'm like, okay, well, this could very well be what caused this. But I'm also like, I also understand that like Erikson is very good with subversion and the possibilities of it being from something else also exists.
The other thing that stuck out to me was this, the shorning, this whole ritual that they went through. They carved a symbol in his forehead and put ash in it so he'd permanently have it there on his forehead. It just seemed like such a final thing to do to somebody, especially coming from your family. And the amount of pain Troll must be feeling here is got to be extreme, especially with like tribal people like this, pretty tight knit bonds that they have together. I would think that would really make things even worse.
I, of course, am a Christian, and I'm always reminded of the biblical imagery of Cain being marked on the forehead so people would leave him alone. And it's just very striking here as well.
I didn't think of that. But yeah, that makes sense.
I think of, they put this thing on his jaw that when I read it, I imagined, well, this is holding his jaw open. And then they put this other thing over his tongue so he can't talk. Like that's the reason I like this prologue, or I feel like it was another step up from Memories of Ice is just how, and you're definitely right. I mean, that was epic, Calor taking out that whole continent. But you didn't, it wasn't personal. Like, you don't know who any of those people were.
Yes.
And this, you got one guy who's going through this terrible thing, and you're right there with him. And so it was more impactful to me.
Emotionally impactful.
I get that.
It's like a much more personal level as opposed to everybody on the. I see what you're saying. It's less personal. It's more of a catastrophe than you can empathize with somebody that's going through this, like Troll is,
versus just a number, basically, right? I mean,
well, and it kind of sounds like, from what I've gathered, and it's not in Eriksson's style explicitly said, but from what I've gathered is that the Troll and his kin are not native to this world, and it kind of seems that these peer kin are in some way, shape, or form related to Troll and his kin, and whoever this first person is obviously didn't like that, saw that as betrayal, thus the shorning ensues. But kind of similar to how in Memories of Ice we learned that the Barghast and the Moranth are related, so kind of like a similar theme here, kind of going back to before times, I guess you could say, kind of bringing in some of the ancient uncoverings of what Eriksson created.
You're on the right track.
Yep.
See, I don't always suck.
Justin, you pick up so much out of all this stuff. Like, it blows my mind. You do good with this. I'm glad I get to do this.
Well, and I mean, they even say that Troll had said that whoever this first voice was now served a hidden master. Immediately, I'm going to crippled god. Right, or maybe an advocate of the crippled god, as he has kind of gone along, made himself more apparent, and we do know that he likes things that are damaged, things that are broken, things like that. So I guess
I did feel similarly.
Yeah, I would imagine. I wouldn't say I will put a pie on it, but I definitely think that this hidden master is likely the crippled god. And kind of, again, going back to some of the themes that were explored in Memories of Ice that, we didn't really get any conclusion to. But if I had to guess that, these Troll are Tist-Edur, and Troll kind of insinuates that they are related to this new enemy, kind of going back to what I had mentioned earlier, bringing in pieces of the whole Mother Dark story, things like that. So, yeah. I don't know where
say in the dramatis personae that Troll is a Tist-Edur.
See, I don't even like to read that because there are spoilers in there too. So I like to just pick up things naturally.
That's the best way. That's how I did it. But you see a lot deeper than I did on my first time through. I see Kamran and I have talked about this multiple times, and the fact that I see things on a surface level. It takes multiple readings for me to pick it up. And I don't have the patience to sit there and reread a chapter over and over, mining this stuff. I'll come back to it when I finish it or when I finish the book, but I can't do that over and over. And you really do have you have the mindset that a first time reader kind of needs, but it's okay to let some of that go. I'm like you. The dramatis persona could be very distracting because I'm not one. I don't get this. What I'm doing, it's like the Hitchcock in his movies. I'm sitting here looking for these people to show up. It's the problem I have with the dramatis persona. Sometimes the people listed in Gardens of the Moon, they have one line and walk off, but they're listed up front in the dramatis persona, and you wait the whole book for them. They show up. So I like you just usually skip past the dramatis persona.
I usually do too. I just happened to look at it on this one because I felt like that's probably what he was, and I didn't know.
Oh, it's fine.
I looked.
It's okay, sure.
Justin, when in Memories of Ice did you know Whiskey Jack's leg was going to break?
I didn't.
Really? Oh, okay. That surprised me because, what you're picking up just from the prologue, I would think that because all the hints, we're going through it right now, and I was making a tally almost of how many. It's like every time Whiskey Jack is mentioned, the leg is mentioned, and it should have been so obvious to me. I was completely surprised by it.
Oh my word!
Well,
me too.
when it happened, I'm like, everything else just clicked. I'm like, oh my God, which almost makes the whole, is it Hedge or Mallet? I always get like
Mallet
dyslexic with them.
When he crumples, when he realized what happened. Yes.
Yeah. And like the rest of his comrades are like, hey, like this guy might get suicidal here. It's very like subtle and very short. It almost accentuates how Mallet feels, even like 10 times more. And like, you don't know him that well as a character, really. Like, he is such a background guy. You relate to this guy you barely know, because how many times did he offer to heal Whiskey Jack's leg? And, oh, we'll do it later. And like, we all get like that. We're like, we'll deal with that later. And then like natural consequences, right? Like,
Yeah.
kind of going back to the Solanda thing a little bit. This is the part that makes me think that it may potentially be something else, is because that the flood. So if the Edur did intentionally or unintentionally flood this world, I'm imagining that it was potentially based on orders from whoever this first Edur that's talking, the leader, so to speak, was told to wipe out these pure kin. It said that the way that the flood was described seemed to come from like a very tropical region, which I didn't quite get the sense that our taking in the Solanda was really tropical. I kind of like felt it was more like oceanic, so to speak, whereas this I feel was more like river, like Amazon, something that's like moist but dry. And then you got this river that's flooding into a continent that is mainly colder. That's kind of what makes me think a little bit that it may not be from the Solanda. But again, not a lot of conclusivity to really pick one way or the other. This thought at the end of the prologue where Troll is telling him kind of like his internal monologue about nature fights one enemy, and that was in balance. And it wasn't until like I reread the chapter or the prologue where I'm like, he's talking about people. People are the imbalance to nature. And I just thought that was really fucking genius. I thought it was so cool.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment. I was talking to my son the other day, and I was telling him there's no AI on Earth that wouldn't deem humans as the problem when it gets smart enough, like, because he was asking what I thought would happen if it got smart enough to, get control of stuff. And I said, we're in trouble.
Right.
Did you show him the
James
movie
Cameron has
Terminator
shown
yet?
James Cameron. I was going to say James Cameron has shown us what happens.
But also, like, the thing with AI is that it's human generated, right? Like, we're putting the knowledge that we have into AI, and there's tons of human error in it. Unless we can perfect human error, which exists pretty much anywhere you look, AI is never going to be that great, I guess.
I guess they think that
all of it exists with the hardware.
It'll be able to.
We own the hardware, and we're flawed.
Yeah, it'll be able to iterate on itself to the point where it gets smarter than all the people on Earth combined. So I guess the assumption is you don't need humans to make it smarter. It's going to start doing its own calculations at some point. Maybe, if they ever get there.
Gotcha.
That's pretty scary.
It
is.
Scary.
Yeah.
Last thought about the prologue here, and it kind of ties into the nature thing. This just last line where he's like, the nature shall not abide. And it kind of makes me seem that nature will find a way to thwart his brother, the first, or something along those lines, where what other of the unnatural occurrence that took place here, regardless of what we know about it, nature will somehow find a way to correct itself.
This, Justin, I'm having a thought. This is going to be Jurassic Park all over again. The Kachain and Shamal are going to start breeding, and that's it.
Man, I thought Jurassic Park as well when he said that. Nature finds a way.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess that's all I have for the prologue. It was beautiful. I'm definitely left with a shit ton of questions.
I really liked how dark it was.
And I was saying it was one of the tighter prologues. It's one of the shortest prologues. It's very, very short.
This is true. Yeah.
Well, Justin, I can take the epigraph here, and then you can roll into your first section of the actual chapter if you would like.
Sure.
Or I guess we have 2 epigraphs here. I'll take the first one. All right. Well, this first subbook is The Faces in the Rock, and the epigraph is "The slower the river, the redder it runs," which is a Nathy saying. Yeah, I guess it makes sense. You bloody it up, and it ain't moving fast. It's going to be red.
Chapter. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh.
No, take it, man.
Chapter 1 epigraph: Children from a dark house choose shadowed paths. Also a Nathy folk saying.
Good saying.
Yeah. I'm not sure quite what that means, but maybe throughout the book things will get clearer. But the first section here: the dog had ravaged a man, a woman, and small child before the warriors drove it into an abandoned kiln. The dog had never shown so much loyalty as it had done its job guarding the Urid lands. There were no wounds to suggest the spirit of madness had entered the dog's veins. The dog was not possessed by rabies. Its position within the pack had not been challenged. The warriors stabbed the dog to death with their spears. The shamans examined the bodies. 2 had died of their wounds, but the child still clung to life. In a procession carried by his father to the faces in the rock, the boy was laid down in a glade before the 7 gods of the Teblor. The boy was left there in his pain. This was not an unexpected fate, as the child was too young to pray. This, of course, happened many centuries prior, long before the 7 gods opened their eyes. Obviously, I don't really know what any of this means. It reads really strange to me, but I understand that this happened centuries ago. But is this suggesting that the faces in the rock have always been there from a sculpture aspect, or landmark aspect, or is this the story of how something was put in the faces in the rock? What is going on here? I'm definitely going to put a mental pin in it. But that's all I had about that very, very short introduction to the chapter.
I don't really have anything to add to what you have here, Justin. It is kind of mysterious, so I don't know if you fellas have anything to add here, if you can really say much or not.
Not really. It's so early in the book and so little's been revealed.
Also, at the beginning of a lot of his books, the thing that Erickson does again is he just kind of sometimes just hucks you in the deep end and lets you sink or swim.
This is true. I do like to sink, though. So,
all right. Well, should we continue on here?
Let's do it to it.
Yeah, move along.
All right. I can read something finally here, Justin. All right. Section 2. Urugal, the Woven's Year, 1159, Burn Sleep, which I looked up compared to the first book that was 5 years after the events of the Prologue Gardens of the Moon. Here we go. The war stories of his grandfather were glorious. Children being dragged behind horses for miles while trophies of the day littered the walls of the house. These were evidence that Silver Lake was real, only a week or 2 away from the lands of the Urid. Though to get there, one would travel through the Sunid and Rathid clan lands, a journey that was legendary in its own right, passing through enemy territory undetected and moving hearthstones to deliver the greatest insult. Karsa Orlong looked up to his grandfather's story as gospel, while his own father, Sinig, had done pretty much nothing besides the bare minimum. Karsa's grandfather, Palk, and Karsa were ashamed of him. Urugal, the woman, was the clan's face in the rock and was one of the strongest of the 7 gods. The other clans were right to be fearful of the Urid. Karsa was also excellent with the Bloodwood blade, spear, and atlatl. I had no idea if I said that right, which were about Karsa's father's only contributions. Karsa was one of the clan's best warriors. Karsa would not do as his father had. He would do something instead of nothing. Karsa thought too much of the clan's reputation lay in the past. They had become complacent. Karsa thought to himself that he would lead the clan back to their glory like in the days of old. He had Dellum Thord and Bairoth Guild, all in their first years of scarring. They had killed enemies and stolen horses. They would make their way to Silver Lake and kill the children there. He knelt before the faces in the rock, knowing they wanted the same thing as him. Karsa thought that complacency must plague all the clans of the Teblor. The world beyond the mountains had not made contact in decades, and the last to lead a raid into foreign territory had been his grandfather. Back then, there had been 2 farms. Now he thought there should be more. His grandfather's day of slaughter would pale in comparison to what he had planned with his followers. He would leave this night. Lifting his head, he met the bestial face of Urgal among the others, and he thought he saw pleasure in its eyes. That's what he would tell Dellum and Bairoth, and to Dalis, so he might win her favor, so that she would bless him. If she blessed him, it would tell Karsa that she was interested in him. While she might toy with Bairoth, her knife of night stayed sheathed. She would be his once they returned, a prize for his victory at Silver Lake. She would be his alone. He fantasized about what she would say to him. May you slay a legion of children. May flames haunt the path of your life. As Karsa stood up, there was no wind, and he was certain Urgal was present, drawn by the strength of his vow. He thought the other gods would be close too. Baroque, soft voice, Kalb, the silent hunter, Thenic, the shattered, Halid, rack-bearer, Imroth, the cruel, and Sibal, the unfound. Karsa thought he had just begun on this path as an 18-year-old. He was now a warrior in truth. He had heard the words and whispers of the one who would unite the Teblor, bind them together, and begin the war of the people. And Bairoth waited at the edge of the village with Dalis. Karsa knew the words he would speak, and Bairoth would not be happy. Justin, do you want me to bring things up now, or should I keep you waiting in suspense here?
No, do it now. I can't wait any longer.
Okay, so what kind of sword does he have?
Bloodwood?
Yeah, I don't really know what that is, but who else had a wooden sword? Toblakai.
Oh, shit. Fuck. Totally forgot about that.
I don't know if it's Bloodwood or not, but I remember Toblakai having a wood sword.
Interesting.
That's what I've been keeping you in suspense for today.
Oh, well, I mean, you definitely got that out of me. But I do remember when I was looking, because I love the maps. I could have swore that, like, in the region they're talking about, there was a part that was like Toblik Valley or some shit.
Teblor, I think. Is it Teblor?
Yeah.
I guess I don't remember that, Justin. So, you got anything deeper than that?
I don't know.
Or where you're going with it?
Kamran is the map guy with us.
I got a handy app here. I can look on, see what was in the book.
You have an app with Malazan maps?
Yeah, it's called Malazan Maps, and it has scans of all the maps from the books.
What?
Wow.
Yeah,
I did not know
yeah, it's pretty cool.
I did not
it's
know
free.
that.
Yeah, you can go. You can go by books, continents, whatever you want. So we are in House of Chains, Northwest Genabacchus. Yeah.
I did not know that.
He's been holding out on you, Billy. What the heck?
I know it.
Dude, we did the podcast, Billy. It might have been a year and a half ago, but I still covered it.
Yeah, he probably has. Well, I'm always thinking that Kamran's going from the handmade map he has mounted and framed on the wall. So,
oh, my mom got me one for Christmas, hand drawn, beautiful.
Wow.
Okay.
On Etsy.
You gotta send a picture of that at some point.
It's really sick. Yeah.
Okay, but I don't see it here.
All right. Well,
You might have been thinking of the one in central Quantali, that Bellardan. He's a Thelomin giant, and it was a Thelomin steps or plane or something. Is that what you're remembering?
Maybe. I think it was when I was when we were going through Blood Follows. I was trying to find where Thief was. So
Okay.
maybe it's part of Stratum, that continent. Who knows? But okay, cool. Well, I mean, that's a cool little fun fact, Eric. If there's some relation there, maybe you're right, maybe you're not. I don't know.
And correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't it mentioned that Bellardan? I mean, he's Thalen Toblakai, correct?
I don't know if we've gotten to that revelation yet, but
That's listed in Gardens of the Moon. That would be listed in Gardens of the Moon at the Battle of Pale.
Yeah, he's a Thelomin giant. I know for sure. I'd have to go back and see how specific they get of anything else.
Okay.
If anything else,
Because I think there's some terms. I think there's terms. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's other terminology thrown around him in relation to Bellardan.
gotcha. Okay. All right. I mean, Gardens of the Moon is kind of a weird anomaly because, like, I don't think it was until I got about halfway through Dead House Gates where, like, I started to kind of understand things. Where Gardens of the Moon was like, I listen to those episodes every once in a while, and I'm like, holy crap, we sucked. You know what I mean? So
that was when you guys first started, though, right?
Yeah, I mean that's her journey. I mean it is what it is, but it's one of those things where in looking back in retrospect, it's like, man, we could have done this better, we could have done that better, but I mean it's just the way it is,
Yeah, I didn't even have a computer for
you're still going.
dozen episodes. We're still going, that's right.
Yeah, that's all that matters.
That's the important bit right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just I guess as far as some of my talking points here. Go ahead.
They did say Thelomen Tartheno Toblikai together in Gardens of the Moon. It was in a poem.
Wow.
That's what it was.
Yeah. Gothos Folly. It's an extract from Gothos Folly.
We're going way back.
Way back. But it's been thrown out there.
Well, and that's when and I mention this all the time, but I'm excited for when this epic quest is done. Going back and just reading the books as you would naturally again, I mean, I could probably crush one of these books in a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, depending on what's going on. So just to be able to plow through it the way that you're supposed to, but now having all of this context as a base is just gonna, I just can't wait. Just can't wait for all the things that I missed.
Yeah. And he sprinkles so much in there. That's the joy of rereading them, is making all those connections. I'm like Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, looking crazy in front of the board, drawing all these lines between everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love Charlie. I assume this, it says they're in their first years of scarring, so I assume that must be some sort of ritual into adulthood or something like that. Maybe there's not much more on that. I don't know.
I assume the same thing. I mean, there are cultures across the globe that, you get scarred.
Yeah.
And like Karsa here, I think I've got it as a point later on in the chapter somewhere, but I really don't know if I'm supposed to like this guy or not. He's obviously this, badass warrior dude, but he's fantasizing about what this girl he's crushing on is what going to say to him. He's like, may you slay a legion of children. May the flames haunt your life, or I can't remember exactly how it was. That's pretty messed up, right? I want you to go murder some babies. Dark. Yeah, it's dark. And he's just there for it. I'm on the fence with this guy. I don't know whether I should like him or kind of respect him, but be afraid.
He's a very divisive character.
I would say yes on all points.
I don't know where it's mentioned specifically, but I know that he's 18 years old.
Yes.
I mean, I have a 16-year-old son, and he's, I remember when I was a teenager, fantasizing about, women that I was interested in, even though I had no fucking chance. You know what I mean? And it's just and we'll uncover later on, obviously he's grown up listening to his grandfather's story, right? So you've got one opposite of the spectrum, and then you've got what his father is doing, which is described as absolutely nothing. And so he's been told these grandeur stories of his grandfather and wants to do exactly that because of War of the People, right? He wants to be the one that is the prophesized warrior. As an 18-year-old kid, it's like taking on massive amounts of student debt to learn something you may not even be, interested in 5 or 10 years down the road. You're taking on this massive undertaking because fuck it, why not?
He's fully bought into that glory of battle from his grandfather. One thing on the age, they're actually, it says he's 80 years old, but in the context of these peoples, that's about 18 years old for us. So they're not human. They're some derivative. We don't know exactly what yet, but I think when they're jump too far ahead in the section we're covering later, but I think some of the youths were mentioned to be, 40 to 60 years old or something like that, but they were considered really young children. And then, Derek, to your point about children, don't get too the equivalent of children to us versus the words they're using may not necessarily be the same thing. So don't get too tied up in what he's saying there in terms of thinking it's little 3 and 4 year olds that he's going to, mow down.
Drag behind horses. Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed.
But even then, very divisive character. Doesn't come across as the nicest guy initially. Very arrogant, full of bluster.
But I kind of like that, but it's just kind of like one of those deals. Yeah, strong-willed, and it's just kind of like, well, I mean, he seems like the, epitome of, the live fast, die young type mentality.
I'll say this: you love him or you hate him, you will respect him.
I feel that so far for sure, and I'm not. Yeah, I don't know if I love him or hate him yet, but yeah, I respect him as a character because he does not seem to be the guy you want to mess with for sure. Because
he's not very likable. Yes, he's not likable. I can say that safely. You don't need to like the man.
Tactician.
He went all in on PvP for his talents. He's not a PvE player. He's PvP all the way.
I don't know if I get it. Player versus player?
Player versus player, yeah. So like in video games, some people, they only want to play just against the NPCs, the non-player characters, the computer stuff.
Gotcha,
and then there's the people that are like hardcore. All they want to do is fight other people. They live and die by that. And so he's definitely kind of more leaning towards that mentality versus somebody that's just like, like his dad, for example, right? He's like, I just want to come over here and do my farming and, raise these horses and,
Fair enough.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think my last point here, obviously Karsa thinks he's this prophesized warrior to band everybody together and lead them into war and glory. So I guess we'll see how that pans out for him. I don't know if he's going to be successful. And if he's either going to succeed or he's going to go down in a flame of glory.
Very true. I'm ready for the next section if y'all are.
Yeah, move on.
Yep.
I actually think this is probably my favorite part in this chapter so far. But long after Karsa's departure and the sun was near setting, 7 figures rose from the ground. Each of the 7 was broken in some way, imperfect, flawed. Somewhere behind the wall of rock was a cavern, which had been their tomb for a span of centuries. A short-lived imprisonment it had turned out to be. None of the 7 had expected their resurrection, as they were too shattered to remain with kin, and their actions in life had not been honorable. Thus, the reason why they were sentenced to the tomb. They felt no bitterness towards it. The dark gift came from outside their prison, and with it came opportunity. All they had to do was break a vow and swear fealty to another. The reward was rebirth and freedom. The 7 were all silent in the glade, waiting for one to speak first, but he was in no hurry. Urual, whose name means mossy bone, and known to the Teblor as Urugal, he finally spoke and said that the boy would suffice. Sinbaal, lichen for moss, known as Sibella the Unfound, stated the Urugal placed too much faith in these fallen Teblor. They know not that this is even their true name. Bairoth Dead Ash Tree stated that she should be glad that they do not. He continued on to say that Sabal and her own children who were bearers of the truth. However, for the rest of them, history was best left lost, as their ignorance is their greatest weapon. Urual said that Dead Ash Tree was right, because otherwise they wouldn't have been able to twist the Teblor's faith. If they had been aware of their legacy, Sinbaal shrugged and made the point that Falk had also sufficed, a worthy prospect to lead her children, but failed. Heron Tal, Antler from Summer, stated that it wasn't Falk's fault, but rather theirs. They were impatient, and the splitting of the vow stole much of their power. Thek the first interjected and asked what their new master had given them. Nothing but a trickle. Ural asked what they could expect, as their new master was covering from his ordeals, and so were they. Emroth asked if Ural really thought that Falk's grandson could carve for them their freedom. Urugal said yes, and Emroth asked what if he fails. They bicker amongst themselves about how long it would take to begin anew, starting with Bairoth's child in Daelus's womb. Urual studied Emroth, known as Fanged Skeleton, recalling her soul-taken routines, a hunger that had led to their failure all those years ago. He asked them all who amongst them has led a clan of the Teblor as far as he had. No one spoke. Finally, Dead Ash Tree made a sound and said that they would that they would open as their new master had promised. He finds his power, and Ural's chosen warrior already possesses a score of Teblor souls. Plus, Falk journeyed alone. Karsa is joined by Bairoth and Dellum. If Karsa is to die, there are two next to him to pick it back up. Imroth said that Bairoth was too clever, just like his uncle, Falk's son. Worse, though, is his ambition is only for himself. He's leery to follow Karsa, yet has his hand on his back. Ural said that, and mine on his. He continued on to say that night was almost upon them, and they should be back in their tombs. Uragal tells Fang Skeleton to keep an eye on the child in Daelus's womb. Amroth asserted that she feeds from her breast even now. One of them asked if it was a girl child. Amroth said that it is in flesh only, but it was neither girl nor child. They responded that this was good. The seven returned to the earth as the first stars blinked awake in the sky overhead. Those stars looked down at a place where no gods dwelt, where no gods had ever dwelt. Just such packed full of mystery. But I think I may have an idea as to who these seven are. Derek, I don't know if you picked up, and this is what I was saying in our text message conversation today, that there's a ton of these examples.
Hit me.
First thought, though, is seven figures rose from the ground. Each of the seven was broken in some way. I almost kind of envisioned skeletal. I imagined Emas. I'm assuming it's not Emas, and we have yet to figure that out. But did you have any thoughts based on the way that they were described coming out?
No, not really. But I would be on board, thinking it's Imus.
Okay.
When I was reading that section, I was trying to think to myself, how am I going to make this section make sense with these names? Because they have the names of the seven faces in the rock that the Teblor call them, and then mossy bone, fanged, whatever. It's it's real confusing, real fast. Or at least it was for me. I don't know. How'd you guys feel about it?
I didn't feel too bad. I mean, I guess I just kind of felt okay, you got their, I guess, for lack of a better term, their native name, and then the English translation, right. I guess. So, I mean, am I going to remember which one goes to which? No. I don't know that that's super important, I guess.
I wonder what's going on with that baby. Well, that's a revelation in and of itself right there, that Daelus is carrying Bairoth's baby.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like there's something there. I guess I don't know what it could be. I feel like it's probably bad news for Karsa, though.
Well, I was going to say, I find it quite interesting that there is so much here that this is not the first group that we've attempted. Palk's mentioned. So they attempted their hand at Karsa's daddy at some point to do something. I mean, just from what they're saying there. So they've been manipulating for a little bit. And I like the idea that I never read into who I thought it might be either. The first time this world is so full of crazy supernatural entities. I just accept them all on face value.
That's how I am. And Justin will pick all this stuff up, and it just will blow my mind. And I'm if I read whatever, it tells me it's this, but he'll be but wait, it said this. And I'm I did not get that at all. Cool. All right. I see what you're saying. And sometimes, I'll disagree, and then we have some fun. So yeah, Justin talked about a pie earlier. So we had a bet in Memories of Ice. I thought that Calor was going to kill Silver Fox. I guess it goes back to Deadhouse Gates. We had a bet that Justin didn't think that the book of Dryjana, or however you want to say that, was real. And I thought it was. And we placed a pie on it. So whoever was right got to pie the other one in the face. And then it tied into Shaik as well. So I got to pie Justin in the face once we finished Deadhouse Gates. And now we have yet to do it. But, I was close, because Calor sure tried to kill Silver Fox, but he didn't succeed. So he's going to pie me in the face here one of these days. And I'm sure we'll figure something out in this book to bet a pie on as well. But I don't know what it's going to be yet.
At least it's not a slap bet.
Similar.
When I left Fry's Electronics that Billy and I worked at together, the last weekend we had a team meeting of the whole store. They did them periodically. And they sat me down and they let my whole department pie me in the face because their manager was leaving. They really had a good time.
I forgot all about that, dude. I forgot all about that.
It was fun. Some of them probably had a little too much fun, but yeah, it was good for morale.
You were escaping the Black Friday. Yeah, you were escaping the Black Friday that we were stepping into, is what that was.
Yeah. On a more serious note, the revelation that Daedalus is pregnant with Bairoth's child, so not good for Karsa, and then wondering what's going on with that baby, the way they're talking about it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely got that tone of mysteriousness to it. I feel like that's all it is.
Backup plan.
Yeah.
He's going to have to kill that kid because otherwise he's going to challenge him, I think.
I have a different theory, which we could talk about as we go through.
Should this be the pie bet?
No, not at all. Not at all. I am not confident at all. But I guess just this part where they are kind of explaining that, their actions in life had not been honorable. They were too shattered to remain with the kin. And obviously they did something that was not good, that the Teblor, the past did not care for. And almost kind of reminded me of like the Shorning a little bit from the prologue. I don't know if it's quite of the same ordeal or not, but it's weird that they are worshipped amongst the Teblor now. I just wonder if those stories of their actions not being honorable have been lost. And so the Teblor don't actually remember the reasons why they shouldn't be worshiping the faces in the rock, because from what I understand is that we're told that their kin carved their faces into the rock as a mockery to some type of opening, which tells me that they were put there. I guess I kind of think of it like the mummy, some type of curse, some type of like shorning, right? Like some type of weird way of denouncing their actions and et cetera, et cetera. So it's just weird to me how like ancient Teblor people discard the faces in the rock, but then the new age Teblor are worshiping them. So clearly there's this disconnect in history.
The fact that it said no gods had ever been there, they finished with that, makes me think of what else lives for a really long time but is not a god. It's kind of the first thing. And then I think there was some detail in there about these were interred in that cave because they had been dishonorable, but the alternative, if they hadn't been, was that they wouldn't have been put in a cave. I think they would have given them some view or something like that.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, if they were cut down in battle, I guess, had their legs chopped off and they couldn't move or whatever, then they get, they get a nice view of the sunset.
Well, for one thing, for Justin, I really appreciate you spot one thing that I tend to pick up on sometimes, and I totally missed it this go around, is there's always, I find strange mirroring in Mr. Erickson's writings. And always in every book, there's seems to be points that parallel other points in the story, almost verbatim. And I think you're right there, Justin. There's a lot of it's reminiscent of that shorning, something about being holed up in that rock.
I appreciate that. I like to think that I know what I'm doing, but don't have a ton of confidence all the time.
You should have good confidence. Y'all are fine. You're good.
Okay. This part where they're swearing fealty to one another, all they had to do was break a vow. And I'm getting whiffs of the crippled god here, just based on the whole, as they are risen from the ground, the imperfect sentence, the flawed sentence. And we know that these are moths to flame for the crippled god. Curious as to what he's trying to do. And, it sounds like crippled god is offering freedom to these faces in the rock who are, in order to be completely free, they need to actually have the People's War, right, led by Karsa. So it's just kind of one of those things where, like, if Karsa were to know all of these things transpiring, would he still do what he's doing? Which kind of leads into some of the things that happen later on in the chapter with his father, right? So, like, I think that it's one of those things where his father, the reason why he has done nothing is because he knows a different story than Karsa's grandfather.
Interesting thought.
So what I thought was really cool is like, after they're talking about their fealty to another and the reward was rebirth and freedom, they just kind of sat silent in this glade, waiting for Uragal to speak. And this part where he's not in a hurry. And again, it's not said, it's not explicit, it's not explained, but I just really get the sense that they are just taking in the moment, enjoying their new freedom, even though it seems like they're limited to the glade, like they can't really leave that particular area, and just speculating on what is to come next, the promises of travel, rediscovering worlds, and the countless deaths to deliver here. So like, it's just they're taking in the moment, they're speculating on what is to come, and just I can imagine that, like, I don't know, that sigh of relief that they're free from their cave, like being confined to a work day with no windows for 8 hours, and then you get outside and it's nice outside, sun is shining, and you're just like,
well, what is time when you're immortal? I mean,
right. I mean, they do say that, like, that's nothing, they really cast it off, but I still think it was a good visual of them just like standing there, just kind of chilling. Another thing that kind of popped out to me is in their conversations with each other, Emroth is known as Fanged Skeleton or Skeleton. What the fuck? Recalling
Jack Skellington?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Recalling her soul-taken routines, a hunger that had led to their failure and all those years ago. So it was something that was mentioned in your section. Karsa looked upon bestial faces, fanged skeleton, soul-taken routines, and I'm just thinking, okay, are these guys like from the First Empire? And the Teblor, and maybe are the Teblor descendants from the First Empire? And maybe that is something that Sinig kind of remembers, potentially. Whatever the soul-taken routine had led to their failure years ago, is that maybe a recollection to what it is that the Teblor didn't care for? Is this the reason why they're entombed the way that they are, etc., etc.? There's so many ways that this can go, but those are just my initial thoughts.
Question for you, Justin. Which First Empire?
The soul-taken empire.
Are there vampires in here? Because that's what I think of is a vampire or something similar.
Maybe. I don't know if we've run across any type of. I mean, Boschlane and Corvo Baroch are.
That's
probably,
the first thing that comes to mind is Boschlane and Corvo Baroch. Yeah.
They would be a close vampire.
Seems to be every other kind of undead in this world but vampires.
This is what made me think of the fanged skull or whatever. So I guess it could be like a saber-toothed cat or something.
See, that's what I thought. Saber-tooth or some type of animal cat thing. There's many things with fangs, so it really could be anything. Also, there's this thing that I picked up where they're talking about Bairoth being too clever, just like his uncle, right? Polk's son. So that tells me that Bairoth and Karsa are cousins.
Yeah.
I think these tribes are pretty small.
That's kind of what I've got the feeling of too, based on just events that happen later on in the chapter. Continuing off the whole Bairoth thing, there's this part where they're talking about how Bairoth is leery to follow Karsa, but yet he still like supports him with his like hand on his back. And Uragal said that, and mine on his, right? And I'm thinking mine on his, as in Bairoth's back or Karsa's back. Here's my question is, like, they don't really explicitly say that Karsa is the prophecy, right? And I kind of almost think that they're putting money on Bairoth instead. And we just, again, typical Erickson style, are, subverted into thinking that it's Karsa. Here's where, like, this may or may not happen, but I think that Karsa ends up getting betrayed or left for dead or something. The sense that I get from his companions are not 100% full support, They're
not true believers.
Right. Yes.
They are not. They are not.
That's my theory, is that Karsa, I think, kind of gets betrayed and Bairoth ends up being chosen, kind of similar to the whole Dalis situation, right? Like I know that this hasn't come up yet, but she picks Bairoth over Karsa, right? Weird theory. Again, it's very soon to tell, but I just, yeah. This is just my thoughts. I don't know if you two can elaborate or if you're allowed to elaborate. I've gone into the deep end,
Plead the fifth on this. I want to let you cook a little bit.
Yeah. Stew, sir. We will let you stew, sir.
Well, shit.
Tells me, Justin, you might be on the right path.
Maybe we've heard that before.
Might be.
Been completely
It
wrong.
might not be either.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll see what happens. I don't know. I just, for whatever reason, like I know that Derek and we can fight about it, but you don't seem to like Karsa. However, I find myself enjoying him. I don't know why. He seems like an absolute douchebag at times, but at the same time, like he's kind of smart. He's witty, like he knows what he's doing. He's preemptive. And I know that Erickson isn't like good versus bad, but I don't, when I think of Karsa and the way that like the canon is in my mind, I don't see him. I see eventually that like, what's done in darkness will always come to light type of thing. If I feel like he'll kind of understand what is happening around him. I mean, there's a thing later on in the section, or not the section, but this chapter towards the end where, they talk about his grandfather a little bit and he's kind of like surprised at what he hears. I think that there's some things that he will eventually uncover. And I don't know if I see him working with the crippled god, if that makes sense, or going along with whatever it is that he's being toyed to do. Prod and pull, right?
I think what you're picking up on, the way you like him, is probably people that are very driven and have a clear vision of what they want. That's an attractive quality. Now, what he's doing, it may be an atrocity, in some ways, but having that clear vision of purpose and singularly going towards it, people are drawn to that. So I'm definitely in the same camp as you.
Okay.
I'm not saying I don't like him, Justin. I'm just probably, I've got some healthy caution towards him, I would say.
Like the tennis Gowrie?
Yeah, I still don't like him.
Guard for life. The children of the dead seed. No. Hard no.
Yeah. Catapult those things as far as you can. Kill them all. Get rid of them. Like, there's nothing good coming from that. Don't integrate them into your army. Just get rid of them.
That's not very compassionate, sir.
I don't care. That's fine. I'll live with that.
Okay.
Somebody got to do it, right?
Well, that's all I had for that section. I don't know if it, like I said, I liked it for, just the banter. Obviously there's an air of mystery as to like how they got there, why they're there, their motivations. Some of it is clear, some of it not so much.
Ready to move on then?
I'm ready.
All right. The village was on the banks of the Laterai River. Karsa passed a dozen houses as he approached his father's. Sinig was grooming Havoc, his prize horse. Karsa could feel the heat from the horse and growled at his father. Red Eye still wanders loose. You will do nothing for your son? Sinig said he was too young and lacks independence. He has not ridden with his friend's horses. Karsa didn't care and said he was his horse and he would be taking him. Again, his father told him no. He would give him Havoc and told him to gather his gear before the horse cooled too much. Karsa was surprised and said nothing. Getting his gear and affixing it to the horse so that most of the weight was on Karsa's knees and not on the horse, as Teblor saddles did not have a seat, while Lowlander saddles did. This allowed the Teblor horses to freely kick in battle if needed. Sinig told Karsa that his buddies were waiting for him at the ford. Karsa asked about Dalis, and his father told him that she gave her blessing to Bairoth after he went to the faces in the rock. Karsa said it was clear that he had misjudged her. Sinig said that was easy to do. She was a woman, after all. Karsa asked if he would give his blessing. Sinig didn't really say no, but told Karsa to be satisfied that his grandfather had already given him his. Karsa said Palk wasn't his father. Sinig concurred. Karsa again asked for his father's blessing. Sinig asked what would he bless? The 7 gods who were a lie? Would he be pleased by his killing of children? What were the words of his grandfather? That he should surpass his achievements? Sinig thought not and told his son to consider those words carefully, and he would find that they were better suited for his grandfather than him. Paul, finder of the path that you shall follow, blesses your journey. Those were his words. Karsa snapped and said his mother would have blessed him. His father only said that she would do it as a mother must, but her heart would be heavy. He told him to get going. The others were waiting for him. He got on Havoc angrily, and his father told him he would need to relax. The horse didn't like an angry rider. Karsa said he would need to learn who was riding him. He passed the 4 posts that marked his sacrificed siblings. He knew the memory of his siblings deserved better, and he vowed to keep their names on his lips when they attacked, as their father had neglected them for too long. He met up with his friends. They were on horses while a third was on foot. It was Dalus, here to see Bairoth off. Karsa would make it clear he was the leader. Dalus had blessed a follower. She must have known, and it made no sense to Karsa. He sat before them silent. Bairoth said they were off to a hot start since Karsa had stolen his father's horse. Karsa said the horse was given to him, along with his father's blessing. Bairoth said it was a night full of miracles in that case, sarcastically asking if Urigal had come out of the rock to kiss his forehead. Dalus laughed, and Karsa only thought that if Urigal had stepped onto mortal land, he would have only found one of them before him. Karsa questioned Dalus, asking if she'd given her blessing to Bairoth. She only shrugged, and Karsa said he grieved for her loss of courage, turned to the others and said the stars wheeled. They would now ride. Bairoth said it was poor form to insult her, as it insulted him as well. Karsa would be his, or Bairoth's, wife when they returned. Karsa said he did what he wanted. He was the war leader, unless Bairoth wanted to challenge him before they left home. Bairoth said it was not lack of courage that stayed his hands. Karsa cut him off and said he was glad to hear it. They would ride now. Bairoth looked back to Dalus and asked the war leader to lead them. Dellum echoed this, wanting to be led to glory. The elders in the tribe were against this journey, so no one saw them off, but Karsa knew they would be able to hear them leaving. He wished someone besides Dalus was here to see them off. He prayed to Urigal that he would kill 1,000 children. Karsa, a little spicy here that Dalus kind of spurned him here, I think.
Mm-hmm. It didn't live up to his fantasy, right? This is not how he envisioned this to go.
No, it is not. He thinks he's, all that plus some. And, how could anybody compare to him? I guess, I don't know. I mean, these are all kids, right? Like, he hasn't really had a chance to do too much yet, but I don't know if Bairoth has a little bit more, probably a more likable personality than Karsa, maybe not so overbearing or something like that Dalus is more attracted to.
The sarcasm from Bairoth did think of an air of superiority from an intellectual perspective. He just seemed to be cutting Karsa down a little bit with his underhanded comment.
That's a good point. I guess I didn't see it that way when I read it, but it makes sense.
Well, and he does it throughout the chapter, too.
There's a lot of back and forth with those two.
Yeah. The interaction with the father was interesting. It reminds me of the Mark Twain quote where when I was 17, I was amazed by how dumb my father was. And then when I'm butchering this a little bit, but when I came back a couple years later, I was surprised by how much he had learned. And so Karsa just seems to be in that stage where he's fully bought into an ideology that his father doesn't subscribe to. His grandfather's put this on him and he's rejecting his father's teachings. And, he's just doing what teenagers do.
Yep.
Rebelling a little bit. I mean, we all been there, I'm sure. So I only had a couple thoughts here, but, it makes mention of like the horse being hot. And I thought that was kind of weird. He says like, oh, go get your stuff before the horse cools off. Is there really anything to that? Or is that just kind of a throwaway thing?
No, the dad warmed the horse up because he was going to give it to him. He was preparing for Karsa to come to pick the horse up. So he wanted the horse warm, prepared to ride.
Yeah, it's like stretching before exercising.
Okay.
Yes.
That makes sense. My other thought here, Karsa, he snaps at his dad, right? Like, oh, mom would have given me her blessing. And I just find it odd that he wants his father's blessing so bad when he doesn't have a very high opinion of his dad in the first place. So I don't know that I understand that, where I kind of feel like he should just be like, well, Dad, kick rocks. I'm going to go do this, whether you like it or not. And maybe Grandpa will think it's cool, but,
I believe a lot of this is going to be tied down to how tribal peoples behave in particular. You would want the immediate blessing of your father, especially to, the only son that he has that we know of, the only living son, you would want that would be a very important, even if you didn't like him and even if you didn't respect him, it's probably very important for them to receive that blessing per se from the father when on any going on doing anything.
I just find it interesting that he just seems so like it seems like he doesn't care really about what anyone thinks, but this is such a big thing for him. But I guess, with what you're saying, Billy, that does make sense. In a small community setting, that it probably does mean something, but it's just kind of hard for me to wrap my head around, I guess. He's going to do it whether his father blesses him or not, it sounds like. So I don't know if it's just a little kick in his step type deal.
Fathers have a lot of power psychologically over their children. And even if you don't agree with everything or anything that your father teaches you, trying to get approval from them in some cases is really important to the individual. It's kind of like a trauma thing. Depending on how you were raised, if the grandfather, I could see Sinig was the grandfather, right? And then Palk was the father. Palk was the father. Okay, well, the grandfather probably had a lot of negative things to say to his son and the way he raised him, because you can see the son's not following in his footsteps. And then Karsa, he probably had a similar experience from his father, because we do tend to replicate what we learn as children, So I could see them having a really strained relationship, and that approval from his father would probably mean a lot to him, potentially.
Generational trauma.
Yeah. See a lot of that here.
Funny.
And what do you think, Derek? Do you think there's a possibility there?
Yeah. And I guess maybe it's just a little harder for me to wrap my head around. I mean, I guess, I should probably understand that not everybody's got a good relationship with their father. I mean, I guess I do. So I think that probably makes it a little harder for me to grasp that concept. But I see where you're coming from, and I think that makes sense.
Well, it's kind of like, again, it's just having a teenager in my own house, it's just like you tell them how society and the world works, and they're just like, yeah, whatever, like, fuck you. I'm just going to do what I want. It's one of those things where, like, from Sinig's perspective, like, obviously he knows something that we, the reader, are not privy to yet, even at all, right? Like, this could just be something that is never revealed, but obviously there is something about the 7 gods that he does not like, and I feel like that kind of comes up a little bit later. And obviously there's some things that, we're learning there are differences between, like, Hulk and what he's telling, and Sinig and what he is telling. And to Karsa, it's just like, I don't know who's legit, who's not, but I like this version better. So, like, it's like when you have two parents that parent completely different, right? Like, Karsa is almost code switching a little bit, right? Like, he's going on and, oh, well, this is what my dad is telling me, but, oh, well, there's this. Well, this is so much cooler. So, like, I'm just going to go with this because that sounds better. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't have the ability or the wisdom to really reflect and, like, choose wisely, so to speak.
Another factor for me that we kind of glanced and glossed over real quickly was these 4 posts that are mentioned very casually. The sacrifices of his own brethren. So you could see why Paul would want nothing to do with any of this, because apparently he's already sacrificed 4 children. And his last one is talking about going to war to probably die or do something stupid. So I can see why, but this is, there is a very complex, as Comrade mentioned, relationship between fathers. I'm like you, Derek. I have an amazing relationship with my father. Thank the Lord that man is still alive. And, but there was times in my life when it was not so good. But I still never understand it from a personal level. But I do understand that people have some very complex relations with their father. But again, as I mentioned, in these tribal peoples, as we're definitely setting these people up, I could definitely see how no matter what you think of your father, it may not be that you personally want his blessing, but society may need to see that you have been giving this blessing by your father.
I think I can definitely get on board with that. I mean, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense with sacrifice or death of Karsa's siblings. I guess Cynic probably, I would guess, doesn't have a lot of faith in these gods, because I would think he probably thinks that he sacrificed his children for nothing. There was no return, whatever they were fighting for. Whatever happened, I don't know. Maybe we don't find out, but I could see how that would sound.
And we may not. But the other thing, like I said, you have to realize, Derek, I never thought about that until we just kind of went through this together too. It's just some of those we still have those aha moments, even as we go through things together. It's really cool.
It is a neat experience for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I we kind of touched on, the sacrifice here of the siblings a little bit. So I don't think I've got any other thoughts here for this section. Unless there's anything else you guys want to discuss, we could probably move on.
I think that we have done the theme of this very small section justice.
Yes.
All right.
Section 5 here. On the North Valley overlooking the village stood 23 silent witnesses to Karsa Orlong's departure and his 2 companions. They waited in the darkness until long after the 3 riders had passed out of sight. These 23 were Urid born and Urid sacrificed. They were blood kin to Karsa, Bairoth, and Dellum. At sunset, in their 4th month of life, they were given to the Seven's embrace, vanishing before the sunrise. Given to a new mother. Sibel, the Unfound's children, the lone goddess that did not have her own tribe. Therefore, she created one of her own, a secret tribe drawn from 6 others. She had shown them their own individual blood ties in order for them to be connected to their non-sacrificed brothers and sisters. She also taught them their own special purpose, the destiny that belonged to them and them alone. She called them her Found, the name of their own hidden tribe. The dwelled unseen amongst their tribe. The very idea of this was unimaginable by anyone in the 6 tribes. There were some that had their suspicions, but that was all they had. Men such as Sinig, types like these posed no real threat. However, there have been extreme measures taken to avoid the risk of detection, such as Karsa's mother. Bairoth's oldest brother had said one wouldn't make it. Dellum's twin sister responded that they will be waiting here when that one returns. Another trait was shared by all of the Found. Sibel had marked her children with a savage scar on the left side of their face, from temple to jawline. With that destruction, the ability to make facial expressions had been diminished significantly. Features on the left were a permanent downward grimace. The scarring also left words spoken without intonation, thus making words said with hope to sound hopeless. One would make it, perhaps. So it kind of sounds like their mothers did this. It seems that Karsa's siblings' graves or tombs were not decorated the way that they should be, but it makes sense because I get the feeling that Karsa's father doesn't embrace the faith. Kind of going back to the Panion there a little bit. He seems to maybe know something everyone else refuses to accept or believe, which is kind of insinuated a little bit further on in the section. So my guess is that is the reason why Karsa looks at these things that are supposed to be honorific of his siblings in distaste for his father or resentment for his father. But on the opposite side, like his father was forced, or, his wife was forced to give these up. And he has resentment for the 7 gods because he had to give up, as we've mentioned, 4 others to whatever cause, so I think this is kind of the tension between father and son here, or part of it.
I got the sense, Justin, that maybe his mom had a hunch on something, and so that she was taken out, and maybe that's why Dad is bitter towards this. Why he's like, he's not drinking the Kool-Aid.
I agree. It sounds a lot like that.
Yep,
I'll agree too.
Seems like a very series of unfortunate events for Sinig here. And this is the reason why he won't bless him, because he doesn't believe in Karsa's purpose, because he thinks it's all bullshit.
How about that facial scarring? That's pretty messed up.
That is messed up.
Yeah, it is.
Love
Doesn't
that.
show his infants. That's dark.
Yeah, it just makes me like, so all these 23 people, which I guess coincidentally 23 is my lucky number, but like, does these 23 people have the same thing and nobody like thinks anything of it? Do they just all think
No,
they
they-
had like a stroke or something?
They don't live with everybody else. They live hidden. It's a hidden tribe. Nobody knows that they're alive.
Nobody knows they're
Oh,
there.
because
Yeah.
they were given away when they're
Yeah.
a few months old. I gotcha.
Yes.
Okay. Ooh, I bet that comes up later. I bet that'll come back.
So here's my question, and like I'm not, I guess if it is like a huge spoiler, then obviously say you'll find out, or Rafa, or whatever you want to combat with. In my mind, I got the sense that these were dead. These two are or these 23 witnesses are dead. Are they alive or are they dead?
Actually, in all honesty, I don't remember.
Okay.
When I read it this time,
I don't either.
I interpreted it as them being alive, but I truly don't know.
I'm with Kamran. I interpret that the same way. I just assume that these are the sacrificed children kept separate. No one knows about them except the people that are raising them, which are these faces in the rock, apparently.
I just, this whole like they dwelled unseen amongst their tribe makes me think of like, the Rivi spirits in Memories of Ice, which makes me think that they're dead. But I mean, I guess I can also see that, they are living amongst their kin. But you would think that like somebody would recognize them, or maybe not. I mean, I don't know. I guess I don't know how that all works.
Unless they're just permanently hidden,
That's what Derek. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in there, but that's what I'm assuming is that they're so thoroughly hidden, whether they're living in a cave or whatever. I don't know if it's ever really revealed, but it sounds like to me that they're living they're hidden some way or another from the rest of these other tribes. They seem completely oblivious. Karsa is under the impression that if he knew that his siblings were still alive, I'm assuming he might want to go find them.
Wait a sec. So his sacrificed siblings, are they living with those 23?
Yeah.
Yes.
The 23 were made up of siblings of Dellum, Thord, and Bairoth. Yeah.
I thought they were actually dead.
And
well, so you guys bring up a good point.
They might be.
Yeah. Later on, in this section, we're gonna talk about the tracking abilities of the Teblor and the methods that they use to kind of obfuscate where they're traveling. These people are used to hunting in the forest. You would think that the people that we know that are alive, like Karsa and all the tribe members, they would see signs of these people if they were alive in the forest. You would think, unless they are ninjas and have been trained to hide their tracks on game trails and all this other stuff. Maybe there is some credence to the fact that they're spirits. I don't know.
They could have their presence could be sorcerously masked.
Also a possibility.
This is like blowing my mind because I did not realize that they were a part of this 23. I just thought they killed in a battle or something, skirmish, raiders coming. Wow. Okay, cool.
Yeah. What I think is cool, right? And we get this whole prophecy about Karsa wanting to essentially banned all of the Teblor tribes together, granted through aggression and like submission, right? But it said that Sibel created a secret tribe from 6 others, kin from each of the Teblor tribes, almost like a unison, right? So what's really the point of Karsa on his quest if there is already unison amongst at least a small fraction of the 6 tribes?
I don't know if there's any unison. There might be an agreement on certain things in the way that we do things. All this moving of the hearthstones that's mentioned and everything, I'm reminded of all the tribal peoples that count coup and things, that these things are delivered for insults. They probably have a unified version of worship of this 7 maybe, but there's no universal, just they need to be banded together under a war leader or something to maybe be ready to move forward or I don't know. He's got plans, man. Karsa's thinking.
Yeah, he seems to be the man with the plan here. I don't know if it's a good plan or a bad plan, but
this part about like Karsa's mother, it already makes me feel bad for Karsa, which maybe is the reason why I like lean towards liking him. But he's just so determined to be on this path of glory. But like in my head canon, it seems like he's not the one picked by the 7. or that they have a failsafe in Dellum and Bairoth shall Karsa fail, which tells me that like you really don't have 100% of their support. Like, you know, it's like rooting for two teams, you know, like two football teams or whatever. You know, it's just not quite the same. He doesn't have his father's blessing. His mom seems to have been killed, and he doesn't seem any wiser. His father has likely just given up on trying to convince Karsa that the seven are not good. But, you know, again, what teenager isn't going to listen to their parents about worldly advice? So this is just kind of what I think is ultimately what leads me to believe that Karsa may not end up being the chosen one.
It could be set up to be a tragic character, I see.
Yes.
Maybe.
Some people just need to fight demons. You know, you think of like David Goggins. You know who David Goggins is? The Navy SEAL guy? You familiar with him?
Who were we talking about this with, Justin? Or maybe I was talking to somebody about it, but he's the guy who just like runs like ultra marathons and shit.
Right. Well, he does a ton of stuff. He did like a pull-up record in a day, that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
Somebody was telling a story about he's running in this ultra marathon, and one of the attendants is at the top of this hill, and David Goggins comes up to the top, and he's like, "You don't know me. You don't know me." And he's talking to himself. It's like he's fighting these demons in his mind, you know? And I'm bringing this up because Karsa, it feels like he has something to prove, but he doesn't care what anybody else thinks.
He does not seem to care. He's gonna try to do it his way or die trying. I don't know.
Yeah. But he doesn't necessarily need anybody's approval, is Justin.
He is a force.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where all this goes. So I'm quite excited to be able to continue on.
Yeah, I know we've got some big chapters in this first sub-book, so we'll probably find out a lot.
Well, I guess that's all I had about that section. But yeah, I'm loving what I'm seeing so far.
Good. It's a great start to a book, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kicks off hard for sure. Yeah, you ready for section 6 here? It's a shorty.
Let's do her.
All right. Sinig was making a stew in his cook fire when the door opened, followed by a question, asking if he had blessed his son. Sinig told his father he had given him havoc. The horse deserved a final battle that he wouldn't be able to give him. Hulk said it was as he thought, for the horse, not for his son. Sinig asked if he was hungry. Hulk said he wouldn't turn down free food and told his son that Karsa would take down a mountain just to get a reaction out of him. Sinig said what Karsa did was for him. Hulk said Karsa thinks that only the fiercest glory will achieve what is necessary to overshadow the shame that is his father. Sinig poured a bowl of stew and said the scar around the old wound feels nothing. Hulk said to feel nothing was a virtue. Sinig asked his father to tell him a story like he used to, about all the children he had killed, the women he cut down. He wanted him to stir the ashes one last time. Hulk said all he heard when he, or Sinig, talked was that damned woman. Sinig told his father to eat, so he wouldn't insult him in his own home. Hulk said he would. Neither said anything while they ate. Once done, Sinig grabbed his father's bowl and chucked it into the fire and said neither would live to see Karsa return. Sinig told his father if he came back to this house, he would kill him, throwing him out along with his walking stick.
Damn. Some tension.
Yeah. First one here. Yeah, I just kind of thought that was pretty bold of Paul to kind of, I guess, degrade, Karsa's mother in his son's own home, his son's wife. But it definitely seems like an odd culture with some odd customs. So maybe it's not too out of line for what they might do on a regular or semi-regular basis. I don't know. But to me, it definitely felt weird. Like, if my dad came into my house and I grilled him up a steak and he started talking shit about my wife, I don't think I would be too thrilled about that. So.
Well, and also it kind of seems that obviously there's some history here. I think that for Sinig, he's just kind of, he's over it. He's done. He's lost all his kids in his eyes. All of his kids are gone. I don't think that he has any faith that Karsa is going to come back alive. And so at this point, it's just like, okay, well, you and your damn stories have cost me everything. And now you're sitting here insulting my wife, which clearly has some type of relation to things that have gone down, right? So it's like, sorry, fuck you, get out, I'm done, bye.
Sounds like the father has a lot of resentment towards the wife. He thinks the wife turned Sinnig against Palk, and then there was another thing that I thought of in there. Can't remember. Oh, it was Karsa. It seems like now that Karsa's gone, the only thing that was keeping Sinnig in contact with his father, the only reason he was talking to him, is gone. So he could just wipe his hands of him. I'm done with you. Your negativity, all your bluster, get out of here.
Wash his hands of him. Be done with it.
Along with Sinnig here, I did really appreciate that. He stood up for himself, and he got fired up. You threw your dad out of your house. And said, you come back, I'm going to kill you. I liked seeing that fire in his belly. I guess that it sounds like he's got the reputation around town that he's kind of a pushover. But maybe he's just looking for something else. But to be able to stand up to your dad like that can't be easy. So I really appreciated that.
You could see in a warrior culture like this, everybody talking down about to somebody like Sinnig, right? Because the glory of battle is obviously very important to this tribe. I think Urugol is supposed to be the preeminent face in the rock, and it seems like this is the most dominant tribe from a battle perspective. So if you take that into consideration, if someone just chooses to raise horses, it would be viewed as a kind of like a beta type activity, among all these alphas that like to fight.
Mm-hmm.
But you need that too, though, right? Like it takes everybody.
I'm not sure if that's really the case, though, Comron. Remember, it's because the impression that I get from this whole thing is the only person that is truly fired up about going and whooping people is Karsa. Everyone else is having to be drug along by his force of will. These people have been sitting here for a bit, not caring, because if there's not going to be anybody watching the war party even leave, I don't think there's a lot of people that are warrior inclined. That second generation, that would be Sinnig's group, Karsa's daddy, that age group seems to have checked out because they've been sacrificing their kids and losing their kids. I think they've all lost their faith in that group, in that middle group. And we have the younger kids being fed these one story, but the only person that seems to be impacted, Bairoth and Dellum don't seem to care. They're along for the ride, but I think they're just kind of like, Karsa, man, this guy, let's just go with him. Just go with it. There's no real enthusiasm there.
Along your point, Billy, is that at the beginning somewhere, something that we've already read, Karsa is saying that he's tired of the complacency of his people.
Yeah, so maybe he's wants to take it back to the old times. Maybe there's some generational decline going on.
Yeah,
I'll take back that glory.
Not enough stabby going on.
Yeah, this is all great conversation. I don't know if I have anything else to add. Should we move on?
I think we can move on.
Yeah, I'm good.
They traveled an old trail that paralleled the mountains. Old rock slides had created obstacles along their way. 2 days and 3 nights lay the Rathid, and of the other Teblor tribes, the Rathid was the tribe that Urid had the most beef with. They had been feuding for centuries and had left the two tribes hating each other. Passing unseen through these lands was not what Karsa had in mind. He wanted to carve a bloody path, gathering up Teblor souls in the process. For the riders behind him, he knew believed that the journey would require stealth. Karsa thought to himself that Urugol is with them, as it is Urugol's season, and they should announce themselves in his name. There had been a lot more snow this past winter that Karsa could recall in his lifetime, long before the faces in the rock awoke to proclaim, through trances and dreams to the elders, that they have defeated the Teblor spirits and now demanded respect. Long before taking of Teblor souls and making it the goal of each Teblor tribe. In less than a month, spring will begin. The storms of winter were diminishing. The faces in the rock had long ago defeated the Teblor spirits and seemed indifferent to the concept of seasons. Karsa secretly envisioned himself and his 2 companions bringing one more storm. They cleared obstacles created from a recent rock slide, and the path sloped downwards towards a shallow valley. Bairoth spoke and suggested that they should camp on the other side of this valley, and the horses could use some rest. Karsa replied that Bairoth's horse needs rest because the man eats too much. Karsa also comments that he hopes his journey makes a warrior out of Bairoth, as his back has known too much straw as of late. Bairoth just laughed. Dellum sided with Bairoth about resting their horses, as his horse needed to rest as well. Karsa shrugged, made an offhand comment about the 2 chains weighing him down, but finally agreed that they could camp. So, very, nice kind of transitional scene from Sinig and his father moving Karsa and the rest of them along. What I thought was interesting, though, is just these faces in the rock seem awfully manipulative. Like, hey, we just killed all of your ancestors, so now you need to respect us. But also, you also need to start killing each other. Like, what? It's just asinine to me. It's crazy.
It is very unusual. It is most assuredly unusual. And I like that I hadn't caught that the first time through, but the spirits defeating the Teblor spirits. That was very intriguing, very interesting point.
Yes. It's all setting up, from what, if there's anything you first time listeners that are following us that I can probably definitively say is that there's obviously 2 different stories happening here, and Karsa seems to be caught in the middle. That is as much as I have gathered in this chapter.
Isn't that just life, though?
Well, yeah, such is life, right? Especially for teenagers, right?
Yeah.
It is hard for me to remember that he is effectively a teenager. It doesn't really seem like it.
The other cool thing that I thought was really cool, and I really don't know if I really comprehended it because it was really weird, but just this whole concept of semen, not Siemens, but God damn it, seasons, indifferent to the concept of seasons, and something about summer and winter. The Teblor viewed summer as sympathy for the battle-weary spirits, but loathed the winter because of the weakness of ascendants. I don't know if this is like a representation of the Teblor spirits' battle with themselves or the faces in the rock. Potentially both. I get that it seems that summer is a representation of fighting and winter is kind of a representation for rest, etc., etc. I'm not really sure what Erikson was trying to explain there. And why the faces in the rock seem to be indifferent to the concept of seasons, like it changes anything. Yeah, I don't know if you guys can offer any clarity on that. I thought it was interesting, but I didn't understand.
Yeah, that's a mystifying concept, or to me, about the seasons. They're ignoring of the seasons. That I don't get that either.
Yeah, I never thought much about it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
That might have been one of those things I kind of glossed over.
Well, this is also what's fascinating about talking with all of y'all is, how subjective everything is to everybody. What strikes me doesn't always necessarily strike you, Kamran, or you, Derek, or you, Justin. We all have our different things, and that's what's great about getting together with all of us is talk about the impact that all of us have from different points of view. It's a very important thing to do sometimes.
I mean, just hearing us chat about it a little bit and just thinking about it more and hearing, these things out loud is maybe it's just the faces in the rock are just what he's saying is they're indifferent to seasons, which means that they're indifferent to the Teblor culture, which kind of maybe seems that they're more easily manipulative, or they're more easy to manipulate because they're not adhering to cultural norms. They're kind of using fear and intimidation, maybe. I don't know.
Well, is that a reference to basically immortality? They're ignoring seasons because seasons are irrelevant to something that doesn't die. We view life as spring is birth.
Yeah, kind of like the Lady Envy complex in Memories of Ice, where it's just she's so apathetic to because she's seen it all like a million times before.
Yeah, been there, done it.
Yeah, maybe the the faces in the rock, they don't care about the seasons, but I'm thinking of it from like a soldier's perspective. You want to go trudging through snowbanks and shit like that to go fight a battle. You can't farm. You're going to have to hunt for things. It's going to be hard to travel with all your stuff. Like fighting in the wintertime is definitely not ideal.
No.
I don't know if that really relates. That's about all I can think of, though. It's just like I wouldn't, there's not really, I guess, a good time for a war anytime. But if you had to pick and choose, you're probably going to want to fight in the, when there's not snow all over the ground or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Again, I had mentioned earlier about biblical times. In the biblical times, there are seasons for war: spring, summer. That was it. Everything else was impassable in the winter. You were locked in. So that was your time to get it on. That was the time to expand, and is when the seasons were good and in your favor. I don't know if that's what they mean.
Looking at it now, after listening to you guys a little bit, they say that the winter had a fragile peace, and that the Teblor detested the illusion of peace. So it almost makes it sound like they're hungry for battle. They sympathize with the summer because they were battle weary, the spirits. So it kind of goes back to their culture a little bit. Their
fighting culture. Gotcha.
It's interesting the things that you focus on versus the stuff that I notice when I read through. To your point, Billy, like it is really different.
It is. I think that's what makes it so fun.
Everybody has their own thing.
Getting to talk to everybody else. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
I would 100% agree. I think the only other thing that I had in a section was just Karsa and his jealousy coming out a little bit, and such are teenagers, right? Fat joke, and then a thought about Dallas riding him. Definitely some jealousy coming out.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I chuckled at it, but
a little bit ego there, right?
Yeah.
He's so superior to Bairoth in his mind.
Just a little bit of ego, right?
Yeah.
Anything else here, Justin? I think this will be... How many sections do we have here?
This is 14, I think.
For some reason, I thought it was 12. All right. Well, ready to move on?
Yeah.
All right. They wouldn't be having a fire, so they ate the rabbits raw, which was risky since rabbits often carry diseases that would be killed by cooking them. But since the faces in the rock had come, diseases weren't really a problem anymore. However, they were still prone to madness, but that wasn't tied to what was eaten or drank. Sometimes the gods placed too much on a man's mind, and if he wasn't strong enough, he could go mad. Dellum said he had been thinking about their journey going forward through the Rathid and Sunned lands. They shouldn't take paths that would leave them against the skyline or even bare rock. They should stick to the lower trails, but they would be closer to the camps. He thought they should travel by night. Karsa said they would not do this. They would ride by day. Bairoth waited a moment, then spoke, saying they would find themselves in a war. Karsa said they would gather souls. Yes, it would be a war. Was Bairoth afraid? Dellum spoke, saying they only numbered 3. Karsa said this was true, but he had faced 24 warriors on his own and slain them all. He is without equal, and Dellum and Bairoth are formidable warriors as well. They would not take sleeping foes. Karsa had made his mind up. Bairoth told Dellum they should look at the stars since they wouldn't have many nights left to do that. Karsa said they would follow their war leader. They do not question him. Lack of faith was poisonous. If he did not believe in victory, he needed to turn back now. Bairoth said Karsa was a great leader, but has a terrible sense of humor. He has faith that Karsa will find the glory he seeks, while he and Dellum shine as lesser moons. That is enough for them. He doesn't need to question that. They are with him. Karsa said they challenged his wisdom. Bairoth said they hadn't talked about wisdom yet. They were only warriors. Wisdom belonged to old men. Karsa snapped again, saying the elders who would not bless their journey. Bairoth laughed and said that was their truth they would carry in their hearts, but when they returned, they will find that the truth had changed while they were away. Karsa's eyes went wide and said the elders would lie. Bairoth said they shouldn't be surprised, but they must use their victory to bind the people together. If they kept it to themselves, it would not only be selfish, but potentially deadly. If they don't tell the village of their victory, then the elders will change the story despite their war trophies. The story will fit the elders' narrative. Bairoth asked if Karsa was still confused. He said the Teblor don't play deceitful games. Dellum said it was time to sleep, and Karsa thought to himself, dueling with words wins nothing, except Bairoth's tongue might not dry out as fast on a wrathed warrior's belt. I guess sometimes you find out the story that you're telling people is not the same story that everybody hears. That's kind of what I gathered from all of this.
Which kind of aligns with Polk, right? Like, this kind of makes me immediately think that Polk is not exactly, he's over exaggerating the story of his journey.
And we kind of see an example of that, like towards the end. The one woman's like, "Oh, he had to beg for his way across," or whatever she says. But
yeah, it's exactly what I'm thinking of. So, but there's definitely some deceit, and Karsa's like, "Oh no, they don't play that way," but there's definitely something going on here.
Yeah, I mean, any body of power is going to use whatever they can to advance their agenda. And if it's to bring the people together, they may not have supported them when they left, but if they are successful, they're going to capitalize on that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, why not use it to your advantage, right?
And it's pretty easy as a youth to see everything in black and white. And then as you get older, you start to see, there's gray areas. And this would be one of those gray areas where the elders are kind of playing in there. And Karsa sees it as a moral issue that they didn't support them leaving, and then they're going to lie about it when they get back.
It's just kind of the game within the game. I only had a couple thoughts here, but I thought it was kind of funny that it seems, you got these fierce warriors and their Achilles heel is, potentially uncooked rabbit. But I guess now that, the faces and the rocks showed up, it's not so much of a worry, but I don't know. It seemed like an odd detail to me, but I kind of like it.
I was thinking how nasty that would taste.
It's an interesting detail. Oh, yeah. But I think it's interesting. They're like, no, we don't get sick from diseases anymore. We just go a little crazy sometimes. But
getting mad cow disease from the rabbits.
Some prions in there or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. My other thought here is just, like we kind of see at the end of this, their fighting skill. But I would love to see, or I wonder, how would they fare against Segula? Like, could they hold their own, or would the Segula just tear them to shreds?
I can't say much right now.
That's a good question. That's a good question.
I don't know. I feel like the Segula would dominate.
Yeah, I have a really soft spot for them. They are like tippy top of my favorite, but I don't want to say too much more.
I mean, right now they're just kind of a mystery, so they're just like cool as hell. But now you have this other faction that is a warrior culture and pretty good at fighting. I think 3-on-3 it probably wouldn't be a fair fight, but maybe if it was 3 of them against one Segula, maybe they could hold their own. If it was like the third, I don't know. Maybe we'll get to see. No, Justin?
I 100% disagree.
Wipe the floor with them?
They took on Tool. They've taken on Kachain Jamal. They've taken on Animander Rake, right? Like, you're going to have to go again. Like, I would imagine if they were going to take on the Segula, that they're going to take on the lower ranked Segula.
Maybe.
I don't think we're talking Mach and Sanu and Thruel at all.
Maybe not.
Like it was mentioned, maybe only send like about 100 of your like 10th level initiates or something like that to go take care of business.
Sounds like there might be a pie bet here. And no, not yet. Not enough convention yet. Okay.
It's too early for pie bets.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sure there will become a point where I feel really strongly about something, and Justin's not going to be on board, and then I will make that proposition. That was all I had, Justin.
Yeah, let's rock it. Rock'em sock'em. Right. Dellum reported that there were at least 8 and a youth. They do have 2 hearths and have been hunting the bear that lived within the caves. They have succeeded in killing that bear, for they are cooking the bear currently. Bairoth said that this was a good thing, as the Wraith would be full of themselves. Karsa asked why. Bairoth explained that after killing the bear, they would be full of themselves, feeling invincible. This would then cause them to become careless. Bairoth ended by asking Dellum if they had horses. Dellum replies that bears know the sound of hooves, but if they brought dogs along, none of them survived the journey back. The 3 got down from their mounts. Dellum had slipped ahead to scout the Wraith encampment. Bairoth grinned at Karsa and said that the child should be taken first. Karsa told him to leave the child to him. Karsa outlines his plan, and after a bit of arguing from the other two, they finally settle on Karsa's plan. Dellum asks why they're not riding their horses. Karsa replied that he's had enough of their shit, and to just follow, but at a slower pace. Both Bairoth and Dellum shared a look and simply said that they were here to witness. Karsa unslung his bloodwood sword and held out the sword before him. Karsa reached a boar trail that Dellum had pointed out, making his way towards the Wraith camp. He was quickly gaining speed. In the center of the camp, 3 of the 8 were sitting around eating bear meat. 2 others sat nearby, blood oiling their swords. The remaining 3 stood speaking to one another less than a few paces from the opening of the boar trail. The youth was at the far end. Karsa's sprint was at its peak when he reached the glade. His arrival was explosive. One moment, the Wraith camp is relaxing and acting all cool. The next, they're all dead, and the youth is running for his life into the woods. The war leader smiled at the sight of the youth fleeing. Bairoth and Dellum had entered the camp moments later. They were having their fun with chasing around the flailing body of one of the Wraith campers, severing appendages as it flailed about. Karsa knew that they were upset because he left them with nothing. Ignoring his 2 companions, he began to remove the 3 small knives that impaled him during his scuffle. Karsa heard "War Leader" with an angry voice. He turned around to face Bairoth. Bairoth stated that the youth had gotten away, and now they must hunt him. Karsa told Bairoth that the youth was meant to escape, and Bairoth gave him a look of confusion. Karsa makes a quip about Bairoth being clever, and then explains that the youth will reach the village and explain what happened, and that 3 horseless Urid did the killing and were roaming about, thus confining the search area, as they'll think we're on foot. Dellum approached, and Karsa told him to speak. Dellum tells Karsa that he's made a great enemy for the Urid, for that the youth will not forget this, and will seek his vengeance against them. Karsa said that one day that Wraith ward leader would kneel to him. This he vowed. Both his companions were speechless at hearing this. Bairoth turned away and told Karsa that this vow would get him killed. Karsa said that this was one of many vows, and they shall see, they shall witness. Bairoth paused for his examination of the bearskin and skull to say that they didn't have a choice, did they? Karsa explained that as long as they still had breath, Bairoth told Karsa to remind them one day that it's what it's like to be in Karsa's shadow. Dellum told Karsa that he had wounds to mend. Bairoth collected the bear and skull as a Wraith trophy, and Dellum was to take the ears and tongues as a trophy. Again, very action-packed, and as I mentioned earlier on in the episode, Bairoth and Dellum, mainly Bairoth, kind of just undermining Karsa along the way, and kind of gets outwitted a little bit with the whole youth and the horses. Quite see Karsa's plan, but eventually go along, but in their minds, they're completely doubting what it is that he's doing, but it ends up working in Karsa's favor anyway. I didn't have a ton of comments, really, because it was so action-packed. I really didn't do it justice in my summary, but just the whole attack on this encampment by Karsa was just really cool to read, and just the swiftness of it all was just intense.
The thing that I noted here was he didn't seem to care too much about the damage he took from these knife wounds. And I do believe that it mentioned he was already starting to heal up a little bit, rather with 2 of them in particular. And I think one of them he needed to stitch up.
Yeah.
I guess overall, this type of damage, not a concern.
I guess I didn't catch the healing part, but I think he got cut by a sword on his butt, and that was the one he was most concerned with, that he was going to stitch up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it was. It said that the blood was stopping already when he pulled the knives out or something.
Yeah, it didn't spurt out, so he wasn't worried about hitting a vein or artery. Right?
Well, this seems to imply some kind of control of, at least on some level, of healing.
I just took it as anatomical. I don't know why I didn't think of that.
Kind of like a space marine outside of his armor. Warhammer 40K.
I haven't done anything with Warhammer, but my cousin's big into it. He paints the little miniatures and stuff. He does all that.
Yeah, you can go deep on Warhammer.
I hear there's a ton of books, like 8,000 books.
There's some pretty good stories there. Yeah.
Maybe not 8,000, Justin, but there's a lot of them.
Outside, I mean, the only other comment I had was the youth is described as no more than 40, but that was explained the very beginning of the episode, so I don't feel like I have to repeat it because I know now. My question got answered.
I did. It made me think though, because I know it said like Karsa, he's like 18, and then they're calling this guy a youth at like 40. So is he younger than this dude, this kid that's running away, or no?
I thought Karsa was 80.
Oh, that's right. You did mention that. Okay.
Yeah, I think you're right on that, Comro.
So I would imagine that he's half.
He's a youth, but that was a younger youth.
Yeah.
So he'd be like 16 to Karsa's like 18 or something like that.
No, he would.
Yeah, something. Yeah.
Well, anything else there, fellas, or should we move on?
Do it to it.
We can move on.
All right. Among the Teblor, the Wrath had bred the fewest horses. Despite this, Karsa and his companions had plenty of space to ride. They had come across an adult and 2 kids who they had ridden down. They took the horses and rode down the trail until they came to a fork in the path. They took the higher path while Dellum covered it. As they set up camp, they let the horses walk and stretch their necks. Karsa said that tomorrow they would leave the trail. Bairoth asked if they would make for the easier, lower trails. Dellum said if they were quick, they could pass through the Wrathed lands in a day. Karsa said no. They would double back on the trail, and asked who would be left in the village. Bairoth said the young, old, and crippled. Karsa said they would attack the village, then look for those out on the hunt. Dellum said this was not the only village, and word would get out to the other 3. Karsa said they were only small ones. Dellum said they would be followed by an angry mob. Karsa was counting on this and asked when the Sunid last saw in Urid. Bairoth said his grandfather's time. Karsa continued, saying they knew the war cry of the Wrathed. Bairoth asked if they would start a war between the clans. Karsa told him to witness what would come. Karsa watched Bairoth use a bear skull and start to fashion it as a weapon. Bairoth asked if Karsa had any more straps he could use. Karsa said he was welcome to have them and told Bairoth to make sure he slept that night. I had kind of one comment here, and I mean, you can just see Karsa planning ahead. He's playing 4D chess with these dudes while they're still trying to figure out how to play checkers. I mean, he's definitely confident, but I hope he's not overconfident, and that's kind of where I don't know how to feel about him. I don't know if I should like his confidence or just be wary of it. I don't know yet. It's going to take me probably a few more chapters, I think.
I would agree. I mean, again, for the most part, the section feels very transitional, kind of moving past what happened at the first encampment, and he's revealing kind of more of his expert strategy, right? So that's kind of the sense that I get from this particular section.
It's the road trip section of the book.
That's a good way to put it, road trip. I like it.
Oh, I appreciated how they walked the horses backwards up the trail.
Just like doubling back?
Yeah. Did I jump ahead? Was that during this section? I thought in one section they walked the horses backwards up a hill so that it seemed like they went one way versus the other to kind of fool them a little bit.
I didn't catch that. I just thought they were doubling back. Oh man, how could you get?
Yeah, they like walked them backwards.
Mm-hmm.
Well trained.
Walking them backwards.
Wow. I didn't catch that.
Yeah, they're trying to mislead their pursuers, which is why they're doubling back, is they're trying to make the village people that the youth ran to follow them, even though they're backtracking to go back to the village to do what we see later.
I got that they were backtracking, but I didn't pick up that they walked the horse backwards, so it would look like they were going forward, though. Huh? That's cool.
So again, to Karsa's really cool. Plan, right? Your 4D chess, definitely.
Yeah.
And then this kind of goes back to that conversation we had earlier about their ability to track people in this forest. And it makes me think that if all those siblings were alive, they would have seen the signs of them,
I think I'm aligning.
Unless there's some sorceress.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like you. It could be, if it ain't sorceress, because my feeling is the fact that I don't think the people seem to go to this place anymore. They don't seem to dig going to the faces of the rock. Karsa seemed to be the only one interested in going in this generation. These other people seem to be like, yeah, whatever. Those guys, man, they never do it. They never do us any solid. So anything that would be down there, they might not. They just be anything that would be happening, and they would be unaware because no one cares. No one goes down there. That's my impression.
Yeah, they were lining a ridge. Maybe people don't go up there as they were watching them leave.
Yeah,
good points. Yeah, these are all like really cool details that get said but don't get said. Yeah.
Well, it says something to each one of us separately, is what it seems to do, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, how we're all reading the same words.
Mm-hmm. We definitely have that reaction often, I think, Justin.
Yeah.
Even just between you and I, we're reading the same words, but we take different things away.
Well, for example, I use this as a great example about subjectivity. When the Marvel movies first started coming out, I never watched one until the second Avengers movie. But everyone told me about every one of those movies in great detail. But every time when I watch those movies, I'm looking for these bits and pieces that people have fixated on, and I never saw what they were fixated on because I saw what I was fixated on. And so because we're all subjective individuals, we see what we see because we each have things that we appeal to each one of us individually. We'll all see the same whole thing, but separate things will stick out to each one of us individually. And that is what is so fascinating about talking with y'all three about this.
It's kind of mind blowing. Yeah, I'm cool to continue moving on if you all are.
Yeah, move along.
All right. For the first hours of light, they heard dogs in the wooded valley below. They backtracked their way along a cliffside. Around noon, they had spotted a trail leading downward. Halfway through the afternoon, they smelled smoke from the village. Dellum scouted ahead and soon returned, saying that Karsa was right, and it was only the women, the young, and the elderly left in the village. The three readied their swords, poured blood oil on the nostrils of their horses. Their heads snapped back and muscles tensed. They all state their positions for the charge. Karsa tells his companions he's feeling generous and this village shall be the glory of Dellum and Bairoth. He tells them to be sure no one escapes on the other side, and if a woman tries to signal the hunters to slay them, Bairoth said that they would be foolish to do so, for if they don't resist, they will get their seed. The three get themselves ready. Dellum tells Karsa to lead on. Soon they were upon the village. Karsa's companions split to either side, leaving him the main avenue. He saw figures there, their heads turning, and soon after came the screams. Karsa cut down some youths, trampled an elder. The three plunged onward, butchering as they went. Eventually, Karsa reached the far end. A single youth was bolting for the woods. Karsa charged havoc after the boy. The boy turned around to stand his ground. Karsa swung and severed the boy's head from his body. Karsa thought to himself that he had a cousin that was killed in such of the same fashion. He tells himself that the deed was answered. Karsa wheeled toward the village. He could see Dellum and Bairoth hurting the women. As he approached the village, he announced that the chief's own belonged to him. Bairoth and Dellum both nodded. Bairoth gestured with his sword, and a woman stepped forward, followed by a younger version, alas, the same age as Dalus. They both studied Karsa as he did them. Karsa tells Bairoth and Dellum that they get first dibs. They both took their picks and went into separate houses. The chief's wife snorted and told Karsa that the ones his companions took were just as eager. Karsa replied that their father or mate wouldn't care for that much. The chief's wife replied that it was likely that they wouldn't even know unless they themselves were to tell them. She continues on for a bit until she asks for his name. Karsa tells her that she talks too much and then introduces himself as Karsa, Orlong's grandson of Falk. The chief's wife tells him that she knows his grandfather and he's well known amongst her people. Karsa is in surprise at this and tells the chief's wife that Falk still lives and sleeps well, despite the curses that he was put on. The chief's wife laughs and explains that Falk bowed his head to beg for passage through these lands. Karsa screamed that she was lying. The wife simply shrugged, and after hearing screams of pleasure from one of the huts, she asked how many of them would take their seed. Karsa coldly replies that they all will. The wife asked how many days that would take. Karsa, with disgust, told her that it wouldn't take long. They were young, and if needed, they had blood oil. The group of women behind this interaction started to giggle, and the chief's wife turned around and silenced them with a look. She turns back around and explains that the use of blood oil on women lasts for months. She recalls when she did it when she was younger, and her husband's strength was not enough to keep her teeth away from his throat. Karsa replied that if they don't kill their husbands, then the women would upon their return. The chief's wife stated that the three of them would not survive the night. Bairoth appeared and nodded to Karsa. The chief's wife sighed and then waved her daughter forward. Karsa told her no. The older woman stopped, confused by what he had meant. She asked Karsa if he didn't want a child from this, as the first carries the most seed. Karsa agrees and asks if she was past childbearing days. After a long moment, she shook her head and then told Karsa that he was inviting her husband to set upon a curse. He would burn blood on the stone lips of Imroth himself. Karsa dismounted and told her to lead her to her hut. She resisted and pleaded for a different house. Karsa wasn't having it and reaffirmed that he wanted and told her that they were done talking. The first thing is this blood oil stuff comes up, a fair amount in this chapter. And I'm just starting to wonder if this is like some sorceress Viagra or steroid of the sorceress world, because, they pour it on the horse's nostrils. They're breathing it in. They obviously put it on their sword. So I don't know if that gives them like some extra strength, but it also seems that if they themselves cannot continue with their sexual escapades, that they have this as a fallback. It kind of reminds me of Otateril a bit, just kind of like sorceress properties.
Very astute.
Yep, very astute. The women apparently don't like it, though. Remember, she said the effects of it last on the women for months.
Mm-hmm. I like Karsa's response to that, because he's just like, well, when the men return, you're going to kill them for us anyway. It was just like this very like snooty teenager thing to say.
Just another part of the plan.
I was going to say, it sounds like he's thought this out. Like him or love him, hate him or not, he's got a plan.
And he's doing it flawlessly.
So far.
Yeah.
Yeah. Real quick question to you, Derek. So earlier you had mentioned, not sure how you feel about Karsa. You're getting a little bit more on the respect side of him, at least?
I would not want to mess with him, but even like this interaction, like I understand, like I kind of get that.
Martial prowess respect.
Yeah, he leads through fear. I mean, you don't have to like him, but you fear him, because if you don't, he's going to force you to challenge him and then kill you, I think.
I could see that.
See, I see him in a weird way. I see a lead, but he is also leading from the front. So he doesn't just make bold claims. He executes bold claims.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I say, you may not like him, but you can at least respect him martially.
Yeah, and I think that's where the fear comes from, is because, these guys see him doing these things. And that's just, I feel like that's just a little, that adds that extra versus, he doesn't just talk the talk, he walks the walk too. I mean, he's not afraid of it.
Yeah.
Why do you guys think that he chose the chieftain's wife over the daughter? What do you think's going on there?
He's making a point.
Just to piss the chieftain off as much as possible?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and, maybe it goes, and it could be my lack of memory, and it could also be that I didn't summarize it. Maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. I can't distinctively say, but I know that there was a part in this chapter where they talk about they know the oh, never mind. That was with the Synod. Never mind. Ignore all that. So yeah, I think it's just to drive home a point.
I kind of wonder if he's thinking if he had to use the blood oil, he'd rather use it on the daughter, have the daughter kill her dad or something. Which obviously we find out he didn't need to do that, but maybe that was kind of a secondary thing. I don't know.
Maybe.
Did you have the encounter with the daughter in a separate section?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the next one.
All right.
Just a couple more thoughts on this section is when the chief's wife laughs at Karsa and kind of explains that, his grandfather bowed his head to beg for passage through these lands. Kind of going again, to what I would consider the theme of this chapter is just the two different sides to the story, right? But also, like, is it possible that the Faces in the Rock's first attempt to unite the clans was potentially a peaceful one? And maybe where Falk was meant to unite the clans with peace and kindness, instead of maybe this is why he's changed his story so that he can inspire Karsa to do it a little bit differently, because clearly it failed. And in the section when, the 7 kind of pop out of the ground, we do, they do say like, well, it's not really Falk's fault. It's kind of ours because we were impatient, or whatever the verbiage was around that. So I'm wondering if this was the reason why Falk failed, is because they thought that maybe if they just tried to unite the clans peacefully, that they would succeed in what they were doing. But also kind of contradictory. That really doesn't make a ton of sense, because it's the 7 who essentially have turned the Teblor on each other through their manipulations and the killing of Teblor spirits.
Well, I guess the question would be, what would you think would be the purpose of that?
Well, it kind of seems like, from what I've gathered, is that the 7 are almost kind of dependent upon the tribes uniting again, or just uniting in general. And so I think that there's more than one way to accomplish that. And maybe this is just me kind of, whatever the term is, kind of, what is that term? Fuck. Or giving benefit of the doubt, giving Polk the benefit of the doubt, and that maybe he has good intentions to altering his story.
I'm just curious. I don't really know what the purpose is necessarily myself. I'm just kind of curious what y'all might think.
Yeah, fair enough.
I think what Karsa's doing is incredibly difficult. Not many people do these types of raids anymore. Likely Polk couldn't accomplish what Karsa is accomplishing here, so he had to beg his way across to go on his mission.
Not with 2.
Well, that's something, Carmon, that's something I had thought about, because that fact could be that Polk has claimed this great victory when in fact he never had a victory whatsoever. He slunk through the lands, claiming victory and coming back, and these people in the face of the rock are like, what a disappointment. The guy didn't do it. We gave him the power. He didn't do nothing. He squandered it.
Yeah.
And the son didn't want to do it, so he skips to the generation after. So we have to go with Karsa or with Bairoth.
So, and thinking about it as we're kind of talking, from what I've gathered is that the Urid and the Rathid are kind of neighboring tribes, right? They're neighboring cultures, and if they've been battling each other for centuries, it would make sense to, from Polk's perspective, to pass through as peacefully as possible to get to the other tribes to, quote unquote, continue his conquest, right? Like, why have the first thing be the hardest?
One thing I think we may be overlooking too is when Polk was talking about all his victory, all he talked about really was Silver Lake, or the name of that village that is apparently not part of the Teblors. He may not have had any intention of doing anything with the Teblor. He may have just wanted to raid this neighboring farm or that's outside of these people's land.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, those were my only thoughts for that section.
All right, well, we're ready to move on then?
You're to it.
Move along.
An hour before dawn, Karsa led the chief's daughter towards the house to finish what he had started. He thought she was like Daedalus. She had no darkness inside her. He told her to undress. She said if he had taken her first, she would have gotten pregnant, as it was that time of the month for her. She said he had killed pretty much everyone in the village. It will take centuries for the village to recover, if it ever does at all. He told her to lay down. There would be no warriors left in her village, and the life of the village is over. Within her and the other women are the seed of the Urid. He directed her and the others to go and live among his people. Wait for him. Raise her children, his children, as Urid. She said he makes a bold claim and noticed he didn't need the blood oil. Karsa said they would save that for his return. She asked if he wanted to know her name. Karsa said no. He would call her Daedalus. That was a pretty tough section to summarize and be, I guess, not too explicit with it about, what could be a sensitive topic there. So obviously, I left out some of the details, but I think we all kind of get the idea as far as what's happening. Yeah, I don't know that I really.
I don't have a whole lot to say on this section.
Yeah, it's.
I think it's pretty messed up that he called her Daedalus, and because we're looking at this in the context of kind of our society the way it is today, I think this type of behavior among these tribes is relatively normal. I mean, everybody seems to be acting like this has happened before, and they kind of have a procedure around the process of what's going on. To throw salt in the wound and not even ask her for a name just seems like really dirty thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. It's just that little extra, right? Just to, like you said, rub the salt in the wound. It's kind of over the top. Justin, anything?
No, I feel the same way you do. We all do.
All right.
I think it is mentioned that Karsa did conceive 2 children with the mother and the daughter. Like, it definitively states that they both got pregnant in the chapter.
Yeah,
So,
I guess that was, I didn't really summarize that, but it seems like probably the majority of these women probably conceive between the three.
Yeah,
That's what I would assume. That's the assumption I have, because they say you've basically ruined the village.
right, but it was explicitly called out that Karsa's seed found a home in both women, and it focused on those 2 women for a reason. It didn't say anything about anybody else. So
That's true.
I just thought that was an important detail.
Well, I'm sure it's gonna, cause some irritation among the chief or the chief, right? Like, both his wife and daughter are pregnant by this guy who has eluded him. So you just kind of add fuel to the fire, right?
That would be a pretty hard pill to swallow as a father, to find out that happened to your wife and your daughter. And that, well, I guess they didn't use the blood oil, but I mean, yeah, I don't think I could deal with that as a father. Like, it would be on a murderous rampage.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm assuming that's how these cultures function. It's insult is delivered, insult is answered. Insult is delivered, insult is answered. It just kind of goes back and forth, and it may not happen real fast, but that's I'm just curious what all this has to do. Is this part of the plan of the Faces in the Rock?
Maybe, but also what is the procedure here when it comes to the offspring of these happenings? Right? Like,
They'd be raised as.
Would they be raised or would they be terminated?
No, I think they're going to be. Well, it depends on if he wanted to continue growing. He sounded like he told her specifically, "I want them raised as us. Want them raised as Urid." Whatever. That's what they.
I think it depends on whether the men come back or not.
For sure,
That's
I agree
true.
with that. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
because I would
They
imagine
may not make it back.
if they did.
Yeah.
Do you think that the husband, the father, is he going to try to intervene? Like,
I
is
think
he going to
they might wait until they come out and then.
kill him?
Right, because they're illegitimate in their eyes.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
But in a way, the chieftain failed. He should have left people there to guard them instead of taking everybody. Not that they could have protected themselves against Karsa necessarily.
It's an intriguing. I got no idea. I'm sorry.
I thought it was
I have nothing more to say.
Not on horse, though. I thought we probably didn't expect him to get there fast.
Well, should we?
I guess I don't have anything else to add to this.
All right.
Yeah,
That's a tough section for sure. I mean,
it is. It's a very uncomfortable section to cover for sure.
Very uncomfortable, but I think it's important to try to understand what's being told to us so far, and I'm sure that, as in Erickson fashion, it will all come to an understanding sometime down the road. Whether that's this book or another book, who knows? But yeah.
Well, Justin, if you want to take on your last section here.
Yeah, let's rock it to it. All right. A late storm had come down from the mountains. They rode through an hour of darkness before coming upon a campsite of the Wraith, who had left in a hurry. Dellum speculated that there were 12 adults and 4 youths in this party hunting them. This pleased Karsa. The hornets were out of the nest and were flying blind. They ate more of the bear meat, and Bairoth fashioned a weapon from the skull of the bear. Karsa commented on the weapon Bairoth was crafting, saying it was a great moment in the legend they were creating. Bairoth grunted and said that he cared nothing for legends. Karsa smiled in the darkness, but said nothing. Dellum suddenly raised his head and announced that he could smell wet fur. Karsa told Bairoth to stay there and told Dellum to grab his throwing knives and to lead the way. After a moment of hesitation, Dellum shrugged and set out into the woods. Karsa followed. The slope grew steeper as they traveled upwards towards the scent of a pack of dogs. They stealthily reached a flat shelf with a high cliff directly opposite of them. After scanning the scene, Dellum slipped off towards the left to a game trail that led around the cliff. Karsa grabbed his arm and said that they would position themselves here, and for Dellum to take the ledge to the right of them and get his knives ready. Dellum was baffled but did what he was told, and within moments he was in place. Karsa took the game trail and found a tree that had fallen from above. He quickly climbed it and twisted around to see the flat expanse of the shelf. He then waited. He could not see Dellum, but he hoped that Dellum knew what he intended and acted accordingly when the time came. The skitter of stones and the pack of dogs were making their way down. Karsa knew the pack leader would not be the first. The first dog scrambled past Karsa's position, its momentum taking it out onto the flat shelf. It stopped to sniff the air. The second dog came down the trail. His scarred head and shoulders came into view. Karsa knew that this was the leader. The leader reached the flat. Just as the scout was turning around, Karsa lunged at the pack leader. The dog flew into a frenzy beneath Karsa's weight, but was able to hold firm. More dogs tumbled down the path, fanning out in alarm and confusion. The pack leader had lost the scuffle. Karsa lifted his head to study the animals surrounding him. As he did this, the dogs all backed away, all but one. A young, burly male dog who ducked low as it crept forward. Two of Dellum's knives studded into the animal, and it was dead. The remainder of the pack retreated even further. Karsa leaned in and whispered to the pack leader that the death cry it heard was from its challenger. This should make him happy, and now he and his pack belonged to Karsa. He slowly released the grip on the pack leader's throat and up and off the dog. The beast scrambled to its feet. Karsa straightened, stepped close to the dog, smiled as the dog's tail drooped. Dellum climbed down from the ledge, saying that he would witness this, and retrieved his knives. Karsa said that Dellum was a participant and witness, as those knife throws were well timed. Dellum said that they now have a pack that will fight with them. Dellum leaves but pauses at the shelf's edge and tells Karsa that he no longer fears the Wraith or the Sunid. He believes that Urugul walks with Karsa on his journey. Karsa replies to Dellum that he is not content with being champion of the Urid. One day, all the Teblor will kneel to him. Dellum said that he doesn't doubt him. Karsa replied that at one point in time he did. To that, Dellum shrugged and set off down the slope. Karsa looked down at his chewed up wrist. He tells the pup that he and it were now joined and to take a walk with him. He names him Gnaw. There were 11 adult dogs, and 3 of them were not full grown. They fell in step behind their leader and Karsa, leaving their lone fallen kin to be king of the shelf beneath the cliff. That was until the flies came. So, I mean, very action-packed. You know, again, I love the impromptu planning that Karsa kind of envisions as these dogs are walking down this game trail, and the positions that he puts himself and the trust that he puts in Dellum to, I guess, more or less do what he needs to get done. But yeah, it was pretty straightforward. It was action-packed. I don't know if I really have anything outside of Dellum and Karsa's conversation here at the end about his doubt, Dellum's doubt in Karsa. But I kind of seem like this is the point of this chapter, at least, where one out of the two that are following Karsa are kind of maybe starting to like, hey, maybe there really is something here. Like everything that he's shown us, whoa, like this is crazy. He essentially healed a whole pack of dogs to his will.
Started dominance.
Yep. Go and reason with it, dominate it.
Yep.
As Caesar Milan would say. Have you guys seen that South Park episode?
Probably been a minute.
Yeah. One of the legendary ones.
Comrade and I, we use this term a lot when we podcast about the term about core memories and things that stick with always, and you always carry with you on your read-throughs no matter what. a lot of this stuff with Karsa always is core, but in particular, this scene with the dogs is a really core memory for me. I'm not even a big dog guy. I'm a cat guy, but I just love the fact that, that he just asserts that dominance, and all of a sudden he's gaining momentum as this legend he is creating is growing around him as we're watching. And this is just the first chapter.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It is.
Yeah.
There's a lot happening early on.
It was incredibly proficient. Everything he's done so far, and the mastery of the psychology of the dogs, even knowing that the challenger would come forward and make an attempt. Very impressive.
Yeah,
that's some excellent foresight for sure.
But it makes me wonder.
He's a heck of a tactician and a strategist.
Yeah,
he is. But all this stuff that right now it's going right. But is he gonna make some decisions that don't pan out, that gets one of his buddies killed or something like that, or maimed? It's not always perfect, right? Like, things go to hell all the time. I mean, I feel like it's kind of like, that saying, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And he really hasn't gotten punched in the mouth yet. He's throwing all the haymakers.
He's got the plan. Well, I think a man is prepared to take the shot.
It's an incredibly risky scenario. You're right, Derek. And everything had to go right so far to get to this point. So, yeah, I mean, they are walking on a knife's edge. There's a whole hunting party after them.
Yeah.
The last thing that I liked here is just this line, leaving their lone fallen kin to be king of the shelf beneath the cliff. That was until the flies came. So sinister to me, I mean, he's dead, he's not alive, but he could be the king, like, whatever, have your cake and eat it too type of thing. Like, what more are you going to do? Like, we drew you out, you're dead, and now we're good. It almost kind of seems, now that I'm talking about it and thinking about it, is this potentially a representation of Bairoth and Karsa's relationship?
Oh, I'm gonna need you to dive into that a little bit.
So, Bairoth makes a kind of a jive, not really even a comment about. He tells Karsa, one day, let us know what it's like to walk in your shadow, right? Mm-hmm. How is it any different than the challenger?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, obviously it saw an opportunity, right? Because its leader was, it lost a battle, right? Like, oh, well, I've got all this confidence. I've got all this intelligence, right? Like, maybe I can take out this person and then defeat my leader because he's weakened, I feel like that very well could easily be a representation of Bairoth's indifference or his, ultimately his intentions.
Yeah. The way it ended, it was very reminiscent of the section where it said, no gods have ever been here. It kind of has a tone to it, doesn't it? Talking about no gods have ever been here until the flies come. It is setting a little bit of a negative tone.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like the slower the river, the more red it runs, kind of setting the precedent for everything that's coming in this chapter.
He's definitely methodically taking his time. But yeah, that was all I had for that section, which I would agree. That's definitely going to be a core. I wish I had more things to talk about it, but like I said, it was pretty straightforward. It was just one thing happened after another and boom, 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 boom. But, I don't think there was really anything that like severely needed to be picked apart, That
was I like your insight into the challenger. That was pretty cool. I never thought of it that way.
Fuck yeah. I love it when I can do this to vets.
You always do a good job with that.
I try.
Well, should we finish this thing off here?
Yeah, let's take her home.
All right. Towards midday, the three warriors descended into the middle of three small valleys as they went across the Rathid's lands. The hunt they tracked was clearly in desperate position. The warriors ahead had avoided the other villages as it became a point of shame. Karsa was a little bummed out by this, but knew the word of their exploits would make their way out. Dellum figured their quarry was probably about a third of a day ahead of them. They reached the valley floor and slowed their pace as they worked their way deeper into the forest. Eventually, they came to a wooden walk path the Rathid had built and loosely maintained. It creaked and swayed under the warriors' weight, the horses and the dogs. Bairoth said they should spread out on foot. Karsa said the wood was still sound. Bairoth continued saying the stilts were in mud. Karsa corrected him and said they were in peat. Dellum said they would ride down the center, single file, and they would be fine. Karsa said there wasn't much point in going this way if they moved so slowly. Bairoth said the risk was they would become more visible. Karsa said they best get moving. Dellum took the point. Dellum said the old river was returning and that the forest was slowly drowning. Karsa said it runs northward into the other valleys that all led to the buried fissure. Hulk was among the elders that had gathered there 60 years ago. The river of ice filling the fissure had suddenly died and begun to melt. Bairoth asked if they ever learned what they found up there or if they found what they were seeking. Karsa said Paul had told him of numerous beasts found frozen in ice that had been there for centuries, and there was ivory, but most too damaged to be worth anything. The river there had a black heart, but whatever was there had either been destroyed or was gone. There were no signs of a battle. There were signs of a battle. The bones of children, weapons of stone, all broken. Bairoth began to speak, saying it was more than he had ever, then was cut off. Karsa looked behind them, and 200 paces back were a dozen Rathid warriors, weapons raised, while ahead of them there were 6 riders. Bairoth yelled for them to clear space and whipped out his bare head mace flail thing, bolus. He spun it around and caught one of the oncoming riders' horse right in the chest. Usually they used a couple of wolf skulls to break legs and tangle the opponents. The horse behind ran into the first and fell off the side with its rider. The charge from the 6 riders was over. Bairoth drove forward, cutting a dude's head in half at the bridge of his nose. Dellum chucked a couple knives. The opponent knocked one out of the air, but the second caught him in the throat. 2 remained, one for Dellum and Bairoth each. Dueling began while Karsa took off towards the soldiers on foot at the other end of the walkway. 8 adults and 4 youths. They formed an inverted V, and Karsa laughed at their overconfidence. Karsa would not play into their plan. He rode high on Havoc's shoulders and yelled, "Witness!" as he headed for the left of the inverted V. The Rathid tried to chop at Havoc's head, but Karsa blocked their attempts and surged towards the middle of the path. The V collapsed and the fighters were to Karsa's left. Karsa chopped with the sword while the horse went wild, kicking a fighter over the edge. The dogs showed up from behind, throwing their bodies into the Rathid warriors. 2 of them managed to fight free of the dogs. Karsa turned Havoc and drove towards them. They both leapt from the platform rather than fight. Karsa was pissed, calling them cowards. He witnessed. Their youths witnessed. Even the damned dogs witnessed. He saw them reappear with no weapons, scrambling across the bog. Dellum and Bairoth arrived and helped the dogs finish off one of the Rathid. Naw was covered in blood and gore, stood next to Havoc panting, but no signs of injury. There were 4 other dogs that were fine, but a 5th was missing part of the leg. He told Dellum to bind its leg. They would sear it. Bairoth asked what use a 3-legged hunting dog would be. Karsa said it still had ears and a nose, and one day it would rest beneath his hearth. Karsa asked if either of them were injured. Bairoth said only scratches, while Dellum had lost a finger, but not an important one. Karsa looked at the Rathid who were retreating and spoke to Havoc, saying his father was right. He had never ridden a horse like him. One of the horse's ears perked up, and Karsa spoke. "We become, you and I, legend. Legend." He told the others it was time to take their trophies and asked if Bairoth's bear skull had survived. He believed it had. Karsa told him the victory belonged to him. Bairoth said Karsa was full of surprises. Karsa said Bairoth's strength surprises him. Bairoth hesitated a moment, then spoke, saying he was content to follow Karsa. Karsa thought to himself that Bairoth would be content to follow, and that was the difference between them.
We did it. We finished. Yeah.
We still got to talk about that section. We can't just gloss over that.
Yeah, we got to talk about it now.
I know.
That's right.
I will bet you.
I need that energy up, fellas. Come on.
I will bet anything here that 3-legged dog's name is Lucky, because every dog I've met that's had the name Lucky only had 3 legs.
I want to hear the sound that bear skull made as it's spinning around in the air.
Oh, I know what it sounded like. I know exactly what it sounded. Have y'all seen the video on Facebook of the guy twirling on the not the parallel bars, but the overhead bar. He's swinging. He's going to make a big leap. He leaps and he gets about halfway there, and his head connects with a beam on the ceiling. It's a metallic yet meaty thud. It's metallic, meaty, and thuddy all at the same time. So it's one that it's just awful. It's just awful to hear. That's what the sound was.
Do you think that there's a whistle in there too? Kind of.
I think it's like a deeper. It's a deeper.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah. But that core. Billy was talking about core memories. That bear skull hitting that horse's chest. Core memory for me. Something about that left a really big impression on me. It's just such a crazy scenario where they're on this bridge and the horses are charging full speed, and for those two things to connect like that, and it just implodes that chest and then fouls up the horses behind it. I mean, it was a really good tactic that they had.
It left an impression on the horse too.
Oh, absolutely. Well done, sir.
Nice. Well done. Well played. Well played.
That was good, Justin. That was really good.
I have a few here and there.
My first thought here, this river of ice filling this fissure. I mean, it feels like to me that must have something to do with the Jaghut. And then we see, these broken stone weapons, and it makes me think of Jaghut fighting Imus.
Yeah.
I think there's got to be something there for that.
Yeah.
Well, from what I remember from Memories of Ice is that, they warred on all different continents, So my guess is, from what I understand, the Amass have been, they've been chasing the Jaghut all over these continents. So there's evidence of these battles everywhere, really.
Yeah.
Well, usually where it seems to be that where there's a lot of ice, there's usually a Jaghut somewhere.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Rotten ice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, rotten ice. Yes, sir.
Right.
And it kind of leads me to another point here. Just, it says they find like children. So do you think this is Imus killing Jaghut children, before, if they were left unattended for whatever reason, or I don't know.
I go back to the statement I made earlier about not being too connected with children to us versus children to the Teblor. So they said the skeletons there were the size of children. So to me, the Teblor, I don't know if we have a sense of scale yet for them. They really haven't talked about how big they are, but just keep that in mind. It's not necessarily 3 and 4 year olds fighting with stone weapons.
Right. This mention of ivory, and I wonder if it's like an elephant or mammoth tusk or something more rare or valuable, but for whatever reason, like it kind of connects with like the jade hand statue thing. Maybe just because like a value standpoint, I don't know, but that's just kind of where my brain goes. I don't know if they're connected or not, or if it's just an elephant tusk or whatever, or something along those lines. I don't know.
At the beginning of Memories of Ice, the artisan that made those torques that Picker had on her arm said it was some beast that Trake used to hunt back in the day, and it had ivory.
Oh, I did not remember that.
Yeah, so I think it's just pointing back to those Ice Age time type animals that had ivory and were on land. So it gives you a sense of when timeline-wise this might have occurred.
Sure.
Yeah.
A ways back.
Yeah. That's the sense that I got. I don't know if that had any type of significance that like the Jade statue has, which is still kind of a mystery unto itself at this point for us. But yeah.
Dellum says he lost a finger, but not an important one, so I can only assume he still got his middle fingers.
Right.
He probably lost like a pinky or a ring finger.
Yeah, pinky finger. Got to be the pinky finger.
Yeah. But he's just so casual about it. He's like, I lost a finger, but whatever. And my last thought here, just kind of like, I kind of touched on this before, where I don't really know if I'm supposed to like him or not, because like he's definitely like a badass dude, like, but he's also kind of crazy, right? And to me, he kind of feels like Napoleon, where he's always wanting more, and he's using his friends around him, and I don't know if he's gonna pull like a Harvey Dent or Joker or whatever, or he's gonna live long enough to be the hero or die trying. I know you've got Batman on your background, Cameron.
No, that's actually the Kerrville Enforcer's lair.
You're gonna have to tell them that reference, Billy.
Oh, I thought that was like the Batmobile back there from.
No, it is. He's joking. This is an inside joke.
It is. It
yeah,
is.
go ahead and tell him.
It is. I'm sorry. I do offer low-level vigilante franchisees to people who would like to participate in my enforcement franchise. So I'm the Kerrville enforcer, and there are other enforcement franchises. We have one in Bulgaria, I believe, with
you signed that contract
over there who wishes to be part of our enforcement. I'm waiting. I've sent that up to the to legal, so we're still waiting on that. But yeah, we're working on it though.
Yeah, it's definitely the Batman lair from the Dark Knight. I told Billy to have the Fortress of Solitude as his background because we actually did an episode arguing about Batman versus Superman, which one's better, comic books wise. It's pretty funny.
I'm a Superman guy. I'm a Superman guy. He's a Batman guy.
Yeah.
No account for taste.
Yeah, Karsa's he's got this big attitude about him, and I can't help but wonder if it's going to be his downfall. Just this overconfidence, these big plans that they might get too big for him to enact. So I don't know. I guess we'll have to just read on and find out.
Well, I'm definitely excited to hear more episodes of y'all as y'all discover this. We're very excited to see where y'all go with this.
Thanks for that, Billy.
Yeah, it's been great. Yeah, some really interesting insights, things that I never thought about before.
Yes. Yeah, very, very much so. Yeah, very enjoyable. Very great time.
Well, good.
Thanks for having us on, fellas.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
The biggest thing is just to have a good time. And I always expect to have a good time doing this, whether it's me and Justin or, us with somebody else. But this was a ton of fun. So did you guys have any other thoughts on this last section of the chapter here?
To your point about Karsa, how you're not sure if he's going to lead these guys into ruin. I mean, he's definitely taking on a ton of risk, and he has extremely high goals for what he wants to accomplish. So it could go bad, could go real bad. So we'll see.
Good.
Big risk, big reward, right?
Mm-hmm.
Justin, you got anything?
No, I feel good. I feel like this was a great episode, and I look forward to editing it.
Nice. How much time do you spend editing?
I want to, because I go through and I get rid of like the awkward pauses and the ums and ers and the verbal pauses and bathroom breaks and things like that. I don't know. I would say probably for every half hour I spend about an hour editing.
Yeah, it's about the same for me. Yeah. I do the same thing. Yeah.
I just show. I just show up. If Kamran needs me to go long, he says go long. If he says go short, I go short. So you just wind me up and let me go. That's all I do.
Yeah.
I tell Billy, bring the energy. He raises the comedy level in the room, gets me going. So it's great.
What do you use to edit?
I use Audacity.
Okay.
I used to, we record on Podcastle, and I used to use their online thing to edit, and then it kept having trouble with all the edits I was making, and I had kept having to reload the page. So one time they went down for system maintenance, and I was like, oh, I can't have this. So I downloaded Audacity, and it ended up being a lot faster for me. How about you?
I use Final Cut Pro.
Okay. Fancy.
Well, guys,
hey, man, thanks for having us on, man.
We really appreciate the invite.
Yeah, thanks for your time. I know this was almost a 4-hour endeavor, but that is our use. We like to be thorough. We like to go through this stuff with a fine-tooth comb. And I'm sure we still miss things, but that's the beauty.
We did the same when we first started out doing our practice stuff. All of our stuff was essentially 3 hours a piece, almost.
Yeah, it was about 3 hours. And, it was literally killing me.
We literally made a conscious effort just to limit to a certain amount of pages, and that's why we keep it to roughly an hour to hour and 20 minutes, and that way we don't burn. And that way we keep that does take us a lot longer. We go through the books. I think each book takes about a year, and it's the book covers about a year. So we cover it in real time, apparently. But it's what we like.
Yeah, we're not. I guess if we're not doing something else, it's, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 months a book, depending on
Yeah, y'all are going to finish way ahead of us. We're going to be doing this for like 9 years, probably.
Yeah, we're just in chapter 7 or 8 of Memories of Ice right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, hey, it's a marathon, not a sprint. That's what we keep telling ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we didn't do this at the beginning. Yeah, let everybody know where they can find your stuff if they're not already listening to you guys.
Horsefrogproductions.com. We have links to all of the different platforms there that you can get access to. Our podcast is pretty much on everything. It's on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, pretty much all the directories. But our website, horsefrogproductions.com, has everything. And if you want to contact us, it's contact@horsefrogproductions.com. We really like hearing from the fans. So people have comments, and we generally include them in the episodes when we record.
So how are your guys' episode? Like, do you try to stay like spoiler free for stuff ahead, or not really?
Oh, absolutely. So it's designed for people to read the chapter, and then they come and listen to us after. And what we do is we cover everything in that episode and everything in that chapter, and then anything that happened prior to that. We don't jump ahead. We do try to flesh out things like geographical locations so people can visualize where on a map things are, because I didn't really pay a lot of attention to that my first read through, and it's helping me to kind of keep track of things, noting where that stuff is. We try to make sense of things like the Warrens that people might get confused about, give a little bit more context, give people reminders of where they may have seen things before, stuff like that.
Gotcha. Cool. Very cool. I think maybe because I haven't really listened to your stuff because I didn't know if it was going to be, if I'd run into spoilers or something, like that. If I don't have to worry about that, then I'm going to check out your guys' stuff too.
I appreciate it. Yeah. I listened to a couple of your episodes. I was listening to your live stream. I was actually working out while you guys were doing your live stream for the final chapter of Memories of Ice, and I caught about an hour and a half of it. I can't believe you guys went that long. That was
never again. Never again.
I know he didn't.
How long did y'all go?
He let me talk him into it. So it's yeah.
It was like 9 hours, 43 minutes, I think.
Madman.
Wait.
You had a ton of guests too, right?
Just another quick.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Just
another quick thing for on our podcast's sake. No problem. Is that we, thanks to Kamran's hard work and diligence, we do drop new episodes every Thursday, man, and that's been that way for 2.5, going on 3 years now. Every Thursday, got a new episode.
Haven't missed one yet.
Dang, that is commitment. I know
right.
Justin's in charge of all that on our stuff, and we both have kids, both have stuff going on, so it's not necessarily the same day every week, and sometimes it might be 10, 11 days or whatever in between. But yeah, we've got a stockpile of a few episodes, so it's not like we're running out.
No.
Yeah, we have one stockpiled, and then sometimes we've been wanting to build up a bank for a while, but it's hard to get ahead sometimes.
Yeah, I totally understand that. Yeah,
very hard. But again, I just want to reiterate, fellas, thanks for having us on, man. It's just been a real joy, real fun.
Yeah, it was great getting to meet you all and talk to you. It's been enjoyable.
Yeah. Absolutely. We'll have to do it again here sometime.
Yeah, I'd like to do it again sometime.
Whether it's this book later on or
the
next book. It's been great talking to you guys, and I'm glad we did it here.
Likewise.
Cool. We are too, man. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, you guys have a good night. We'll talk to you guys soon.
All
right. Thanks. Take care.
Okay. Peace out, fellas. Y'all be safe.
Bye.
Okay, see ya. Bye-bye.
Bye.
DMJ's Epic Quest. Quest. CNJ's Epic Quest. CNJ's Epic Quest.